Chapter 1744. Deterrence. The skinny man's face became even more sunken when he heard Jian Chen's naked provocation. Cold killing intent had already appeared in his eyes. Ling Hogong looked at Jian Chen. Although Jian Chen's comprehension of laws had reached the level of overgods, his personal cultivation was just too weak. On the other hand, the skinny man had reached overgod in both comprehension and cultivation. Even if Jian Chen had comprehended the laws of the sword, which was one of the laws with the greatest offense, Ling Hogong still did not believe that Jian Chen was the skinny man's opponent. However, Ling Hogong had nothing to say when he saw Jian Chen's confident bearing. He backed off to one side with his sword. He also wanted to see just what Jian Chen possessed that allowed him to not fear the skinny man. Master Chanlong, along with the several dozen overgods present, all remained silent. However, without any exception, their rather sharp gazes were all focused on Jian Chen. Many people believed that Jian Chen had managed to comprehend laws far greater than his personal cultivation due to some fortuitous encounter in the dwelling. However, they did not want to take the lead in the matter, so they were more than happy for the skinny man to attack Jian Chen. Unless they were forced to, they really did not want to offend an overgod so easily, especially one who had comprehended the laws of the sword that were known to be one of the laws with the greatest offense. Of course, there was another reason why they did not want to fight. They had not seen something that interested them. Once something that would be extremely beneficial to them appeared, they would be willing to throw their lives on the line even if there were others at a higher level of cultivation altogether, let alone just people who had comprehended the laws of the sword. The young man with a fan and the middle-aged man referred to as Uncle Qin made their way into the God King's dwelling leisurely, walking behind everyone else. The young man looked around the entire way as if he found everything around him interesting. Is this God King Duamu's dwelling? Why doesn't it seem impressive at all? The young man looked around and said with some disappointment. The middle-aged man remained silent. However, when he gazed into the depths of the dwelling and saw Jian Chen, a gleam of light actually flashed through his indifferent eyes. The comprehension of an overgod, but only the cultivation of a deity. What great talent! However, the energy he uses seems to be rather strange, which even seems blurry in my eyes. He does not practice a regular cultivation method, Uncle Qin murmured. Uncle Qin, are you talking about that person called Jian Chen? Since even you've described his talent as great, he really should be talented. I wonder how long he has been cultivating for, the young man said leisurely as he fanned himself gently. Uncle Qin became rather stern. In the end, he could not help but sigh in amazement. Young master, I feel that this person has been cultivating for less than 1,000 years. It's the first time I, Qin Zheng, have seen a talent like this. The young man paused when he heard that. He stared at Uncle Qin in shock and said in disbelief, "What? He has been cultivating for less than 1,000 years? Doesn't that make his talent even greater than mine? Uncle Qin, are you certain? With the great disparity between our cultivation, there are a lot of things I can see through with a single glance, so there's nothing wrong with it. He has been cultivating for an even shorter time than you, young master," said Qin Zhang. The young man immediately beamed. He said, "I heard that he's an independent cultivator before, without any clans or sects behind him. Uncle Qin, we have to rope in this person. It'll be best if he joins our clan." Uncle Qin's eyes shone brighter and brighter. He immediately expanded the senses of his soul and swept through all the regions that had lost their formations in the dwelling. He had naturally captured the sword comprehension building that Jian Chen had been in before. However, not a single overgod present had sensed Uncle Qin's senses of the soul, including the few late overgods. In just a single moment, Uncle Qin discovered that Jian Chen and the others had spent quite some time in the sword comprehension building through a few traces left behind. He immediately became even more joyful and said, "Looks like he comprehended his laws of the sword in the sword comprehension building. The mark that Duanmu left in there isn't anything impressive, so benefiting from it is nothing easy. However, Jian Chen managed to break through to overgod just through the mark. What a great affinity for comprehension. It would a great service to the clan if we really do rope him in. Since we want to rope him in, why don't we hurry? Jian Chen is in trouble right now. It's a good opportunity for us," the young man with a fan said eagerly. "No hurry. There's no need to hurry. We can see his strength in the meantime," said Qin Zheng. On the other side of the group, the skinny Meni had already begun moving. He wielded his spear as the laws of wood condensed from the surroundings, stabbing towards Jian Chen with the power of laws. The skinny man did not hold back with his attack. His gaze was cold, directly stabbing towards Jian Chen's forehead to kill him. A gleam of cold light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes as well when the skinny man stabbed out. With a thought, 2 finger-sized strands of profound sword qi appeared. They radiated with powerful sword intent, immediately making the expression of over half of the overgods present change. Even the eyes of late overgods narrowed. Everyone's face changed at that moment. All their attention was focused on Jian Chen, or more accurately, the 2 strands of sword qi above Jian Chen's head. The 2 tiny strands threatened all of them. The weaker they were, the stronger the sense of threat they felt. The skinny man's face changed drastically. Without any hesitation, his hand tremored, and he struck out with even more power than before. Swish! With a flash of silver light, one of the sword qi above Jian Chen's head shot out. It moved extremely quickly, having surpassed the speed of lightning. It collided with the skinny man's spear. Boom! A deafening sound rang out from the clash. The skinny man only felt a great force directly knock his spear aside while his laws of wood were directly dispersed by the sword qi. The profound sword qi had nullified his attack easily. It did not just stop there. After smashing through the skinny man's attack, the profound sword qi remained just as powerful before, continuing onwards with the same sword intent that terrified the overgods. It directly shot towards the skinny man's forehead under his shocked gaze. No! The skinny man bellowed out in fear. He was completely unable to dodge the incoming sword qi. All he could do was watch it expand as it neared him and approached his forehead. Silently, the profound sword qi shot through the skinny man's forehead and emerged from behind. The skinny man's gaze became stunned. Fear lingered in his eyes. His soul had not even been able to escape before the profound sword qi, and it was directly wiped out on the spot. Chapter 1745. A foothold plop. The skinny man's body struck the floor. His eyes remained wide open, dying with regrets. Perhaps even he himself had never expected Jian Chen to possess such terrifying strength. The profound sword qi had killed him instantly, where even his soul could not escape. It fell silent for a time after that. Everyone stared at Jian Chen and the dead man on the ground in disbelief as their hearts churned. The other early overgods could not help but stagger backwards. Their gazes towards Jian Chen were filled with fear. All of them shivered when they realized that another strand of profound sword qi hovered above Jian Chen's head. Jian Chen did not immediately put away the second strand of profound sword qi. The finger-sized sword qi remained above his head, radiating with surging sword intent as if it was warning all the overgods present. Ling Hogong also gasped. His gaze towards Jian Chen underwent a tremendous change, and he also found himself to be quite the fool. He had originally believed that Jian Chen was not the skinny man's opponent and wanted to help him out. But looking at it now, he did not need any help at all. With just a single attack, he slew an early overgod. Jian Chen's strength left Ling Hogong astounded. What was that? Was it some treasure? Or some secret technique? Or some powerful battle skill? Did a god king leave behind those 2 strands of sword qi? It's impossible for the sword qi to be left behind by a god king. I think it's some powerful sword technique. He killed an early overgod instantly with a single strand of sword qi. If he used them simultaneously, even mid-overgods would not be able to fend it off. Even late overgods would become heavily injured. The surrounding overgods all communicated with one another secretly as they discussed the profound sword qi with great intensity. Jian Chen had succeeded in showing off his might by killing the skinny man, and everyone present had witnessed his power. They understood that he was not a person they could just provoke. Jian Chen knew that he had already gained a foothold among the overgods, so he slowly put the second strand of profound sword qi away. He looked around and clasped his fist towards everyone. Everyone, I do not know much about God King Duanmu's dwelling, but I am willing to share what I know with everyone. All their faces changed when they heard that. Jian Chen is willing to share the information about the dwelling with everyone. You have my admiration, Jian Chen. Ling Hogong clasped his hands towards Jian Chen. I am Guhan Xue. Thank you, Jian Chen. Once the matter regarding the dwelling has been resolved, I hope you can visit my Guhan clan as a guest. Although I have not comprehended the laws of the sword, we can share and discuss our experiences and knowledge regarding cultivation. Jian Chen turned around. Guhan Xue was a great beauty who only seemed to be in her 20s. Haha, I also hope Jian Chen can visit my Feng family in the future as well. I've studied formations a little. Although this old man is unable to study the sword with you like Ling Hogong, this old man does like alcohol very much and has collected a lot of it. This old man just wonders if you'd do me the honor of drinking together, Feng Buell smiled. He referred to himself as an old man, but in reality, he only seemed to be in his 20s. He was handsome and graceful. However, Jian Chen did not find it surprising at all because even though a few people did not seem particularly old among the overgods present, they were all monsters who had cultivated for dozens or even hundreds of millennia. A few of the surrounding overgods immediately tried to befriend Jian Chen. As a person who wielded the laws of the sword, there were very few people who could defeat Jian Chen unless they had comprehended a law that possessed similar offense. Moreover, his powerful strands of profound sword qi struck fear into everyone's heart. By talking to him, they acted as if even if they could not befriend him, they would not want to become his enemy. Jian Chen returned their greetings one by one. Through his conversations with them, he managed to gain an initial understanding of some of the overgods. None of them were simple. However, Jian Chen also understood that these people were so friendly because there was no conflict of interest yet. Once they ventured into the depths of the dwelling and had to fight for God King Duanmu's treasures, they could become opponents or even enemies at any time. Soon afterwards, Jian Chen shared everything he knew about God King Duanmu's dwelling. In reality, none of it was a secret. It was just information on the situation in the dwelling. The overgods could obtain the information just by looking. When they learnt that Jian Chen had only obtained the items left behind by God King Duanmu's disciple, they did not become interested at all. They were all the ancestors of clans and sects, so they had all accumulated a vast wealth across the years. What really interested them in God King Duanmu's dwelling was his legacy. They naturally felt no interest towards what the disciple owned. Of course, they did not know about the previous pills Jian Chen had found, like the soul recovery pill. Otherwise, they would lose their composure. With that, no one purposefully targeted Jian Chen anymore. At the same time, due to the shocking strength he had demonstrated, no one dared to provoke him without good reason, even with the great disparity between his comprehended laws and personal cultivation. The skinny man had become the best example of what would happen if they did that. With Master Chanlong in the lead, everyone continued forwards. Jian Chen also mixed into the group and followed everyone towards the very depths of the dwelling. The space ring from the overgod he had slain ended up in Jian Chen's hands as well. Jian Chen checked through the space ring and found that the skinny man was nowhere near as wealthy as God King Duanmu's disciple. However, there were still a lot of divine crystals, including low, mid, and high-grade crystals. There were also other random materials and a few pills. Jian Chen casually put away the space ring, sending it into the bright moon divine hall silently. After passing on some information, he gave all the low and mid-grade divine crystals to everyone in the divine hall to use for cultivation. He kept the high-grade divine crystals for himself as he planned to exchange them for mid-grade divine crystals in the future. However, to Jian Chen's surprise, Shangguan Mu'er, who had remained within the divine hall for the entire time absorbing divine crystals, had reached the peak of reciprocity and was about to attain godhood. The cultivation of the others had increased drastically as well. The white tiger and seven-colored heaven-devouring beast were only slightly slower than Shangguan Mu'er. They had reached reciprocity, and they were currently at early reciprocity. Chapter 1746. The very depths among the group who had come up from the Tianyuan continent, Shangguan Mu'er, the white tiger, and the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast had strengthened up the fastest. They were also the strongest three among them. Xiongzhong still remained at early reciprocity. Rue Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu had all reached the origin realm. They had progressed past receival and reached returnance. Although they did not cultivate as quickly as the white tiger and the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast, they would still be regarded as geniuses with their level of talent in the saints' world. The senses of Jian Chen's soul did not linger in the bright moon divine hall for long. It receded from the space ring, and he looked around at the overgods around him. Gradually, he became determined. He had already secretly made up his mind to assist the Mo clan in gaining a stable footing, and also move them into the provincial city after the matters with God King Duanmu were settled. Once the Mo clan gained a stable status, he would let everyone out from the divine hall and allow them to remain in the Mo clan to cultivate. He did not do this in the past because he was not strong enough, and he had also offended the Lu family. However, the situation was different now. He was confident about gaining a stable footing within the divine kingdom of Ping Tian with his current strength. After all, there were only so many overgods in the divine kingdom. There were only around a dozen when the ancestors from the 5 provinces and the overgods in the royal city were included. Moreover, most of them were only early overgods. Please wait, everyone. This formation is extremely powerful, so allow me to study it, Master Chanlong's old voice rang out. He sat before the formation and mysterious inscriptions appeared from his disc with the 8 trigrams. The surrounding overgods all sat down to rest. Master Chanlong was the person most skilled with formations amongst all of them, so the matter of destroying the formation had fallen to him. If it were not for Master Chanlong, who had found the foundation of the formation and gotten them to directly attack its weak points, they probably would not have been able to enter God King Duanmu's dwelling even with over 60 overgods gathered together. Jian Chen stared at Master Chanlong, who was studying the formation. Jian Chen also sat down quietly. Fairy Hao Yu had previously found the weak point of the formation, but this point was not fixed. It would constantly move about as the formation operated, so he had no idea where the weak point had moved to now. In the current situation, it was clearly unsuitable for Fairy Hao Yu appear. Once so many overgods took interest in Fairy Hao Yu, even he himself would not be able to protect her, so he obviously could not count on Fairy Hao Yu to smash through the formations. Many gods had entered God King Duanmu's dwelling by now. The overgods had already gathered on the path towards the very depths, so the gods did not dare to approach them. Instead, they dispersed everywhere in search of their own fortune. In the end, quite a few gods entered the dwellings of God King Duanmu's disciple and grand disciples in an attempt to comprehend the marks left in there. After them, even many deities entered. Brother Jian Chen, I heard that the people from the Mo clan and the Ando clan from the Dong'an province had entered the dwelling beforehand. Are you also a part of our divine kingdom of Pingtian? As the overgods rested, Ling Hogong instead made his way to Jian Chen's side and asked politely. A few of the overgods immediately opened their eyes when they heard Ling Hogong's question. They all looked at Jian Chen. I'm not from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, but now that you mention it, you can consider me as half a citizen, Jian Che smiled. He had arrived in the territory of the divine kingdom of Pingtian as soon as he came to the saint's world, so it was reasonable to describe himself as half a citizen. Ling Hogong chuckled, I was just asking casually, and I didn't think that I'd be right. Come, Jian Chen. Let me introduce some people to you. You already knew Guhan Shui and Feng Buell. This is Yu Jin, the ancestor of the Yu family from the Daji province. Ling Hogong extended his finger towards a gray-haired old man as he said that. Eugene clasped his fist towards Jian Chen and smiled gently. This is Bing Lu, the ancestor of the Yubing clan of the frigid snow province. Ling Hogong continued his introduction. The hunchbacked old man with a dragon-headed staff nodded towards Jian Chen. He said in his old voice, Brother Jian Chen, if you have the time in the future, you have to come to visit my Yubing clan. Jian Chen returned his greeting. He planned to gain a stable footing in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, so there was naturally no harm in knowing a few overgods of the divine kingdom. Afterwards, Ling Hogong introduced a few more overgods to Jian Chen. They were the ones who had opened their eyes earlier. They all came from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jian Chen had already met a few of these overgods before. He understood that Ling Hogong was currently introducing them all to him because he wanted to rope him into the divine kingdom of Pingtian so that they would be able to work together against the overgods of the other divine kingdoms. This was because they did not want God King Duanmu's items to end up with people from other divine kingdoms. After all, God King Duanmu's dwelling was in their divine kingdom. Brother Jian Chen, I hope we can all work together when we fight for the treasure later so that we can fend off the outsiders together. Once we obtain the treasure, we can split it according to our contributions. I was wondering if you would be interested in joining us. A voice that only the overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian could hear rang in Jian Chen's head. Jian Chen knew that the person speaking was a middle-aged man called Yang Kai. He was an overgod from the royal city as well as the strongest overgod in the entire divine kingdom. He had reached late overgod. How can I decline since it's Senior Yang Kai who's asking? Moreover, with so many overgods present, we probably won't end up with anything if we fight by ourselves. Working together would be the best. Jian Chen replied secretly as well and agreed with Yang Kai. The overgods of the divine kingdom all beamed. They had witnessed Jian Chen's strength before. Killing early overgods was no problem for him, and he could even threaten mid-overgods, making him more powerful than a lot of them. Their side would become stronger with his addition. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, A month had already passed since Master Chanlong had begun studying the formation. "I've found the crucial point of the formation. Everyone, it'll all be up to you next." Master Chanlong's voice finally rang out after a month of studying the formation. Everyone stood up when they heard that. They all attacked the location Master Chanlong had specified. Jian Chen could tell with a single glance that the method Master Chanlong used to break through formations was completely different from Fairy Hao Yu's. Fairy Hao Yu specified the weakest point of the formations, and this point would change as the formation constantly operated. However, the weakest point Master Chanlong found was a crucial point of the formation. It seemed to be fixed and would not move around. The formation collapsed very soon under the barrage of over 60 overgods. God King Duanmu was powerful, but he only possessed great mastery over the laws of space and the way of sword. His accomplishments with formations were not particularly great, so even though the formation was at the level of God King's, it was a relatively weaker version. God King Duanmu's formation naturally would not be able to pose a problem with Master Chanlong and the over 60 overgods present. Afterwards, everyone broke through one formation after another. In just a year's time, they arrived in the depths of the dwelling, where God King Duanmu used to cultivate. Chapter 1747. The 3 stone huts where God King Duanmu cultivated seemed extremely simple. There was no extravagant display or any luxurious decor. There were only 3 extremely ordinary stone huts and nothing else. It was very difficult to believe that this was a God King's dwelling, and a supreme God King's at that. After all, it just seemed too ordinary. In fact, it was not even as great as the cultivation places of small clans with gods. The place where a mighty God King cultivated was actually composed of 3 ordinary stone huts. This sight took all the overgods by surprise. To them, God King Duanmu's dwelling would definitely be extravagant, well-decorated, and covered in treasures as a supreme God King. However, only 3 regular stone huts were presented before them. The stone used to build the huts were the most common material in the saints' world. They were nothing valuable, and the passage of time had already left behind irremovable traces. They were not protected by any formations. Is this really where God King Duanmu cultivated? Have we come to the wrong place? An early overgod asked within the group. He was the ancestor of a clan from the divine kingdom of Qingyang. He was not the only one who felt doubtful as similar thoughts crossed the heads of all the overgods present. Where God King Duanmu cultivated was just a little too shabby, and it was even worse than their personal space for cultivation. They found it very difficult to believe that a supreme God King would actually cultivate in a place like this. Master Chanlong looked around and said, "This is already the very depths of the dwelling, so it must be where God King Duanmu normally resided. It can't be wrong." Master Chanlong had been of great help along the way. Without him, the overgods would not have even managed to enter the dwelling, so he had already become a person of prestige among all the overgods. Everything he said carried weight, so his words just then had confirmed this place to be where God King Duanmu cultivated. Uncertainty flickered through the eyes of many overgods. They observed the surroundings carefully, and they allowed the senses of their soul to envelope the region, filling the entire space. Although they were unable to extend their senses into the stone huts, they had found that no formations existed there either. Many of the overgods wanted to move. They yearned for the 3 stone huts, but none of them moved by themselves. Instead, they all looked towards Master Chanlong and were extremely cautious. Although they had failed to sense the existence of any formations, they all understood that this did not mean there were no formations hidden from their senses. If Master Chanlong did not move, they did not dare to move either. Master Chanlong closed his eyes and the 8 trigrams disc in his hand shone with black and white light. Vaguely, a huge Taiji diagram revolved around him as mysterious inscriptions flickered. A while later, Master Chanlong opened his eyes. A gleam of joy flickered through his eyes before he quickly hid it. However, under the attention of all the overgod present, his sudden change was captured by them all. "Please wait. I will go ahead and check first," Master Chanlong said to everyone as if nothing had happened. His 8 trigrams disc hovered above his head and shone with resplendent light as he walked forwards. The overgods all followed behind Master Chanlong as uncertainty flickered through their eyes. At this moment, Master Chanlong sped up abruptly and turned into a blur. He charged towards the first stone hut quickly. Master Chanlong's every single movement weighed on the minds of everyone, so when they saw him suddenly speed up, a gleam of light flickered through the eyes of all the overgods behind him. Without any hesitation, their speeds exploded, and they turned into blurs as well as they charged towards the first hut as quickly as they could. Jian Chen was not an exception. He also planned to charge towards the stone hut, but as soon as he began to move, Fairy Hao Yu's voice rang out in his head. "Don't go over." These 3 short words caused Jian Chen shiver inside. He watched the overgods around him charge towards the first stone hut in a hurry while he halted without any hesitation. At the same time, he secretly communicated with Ling Hogong and the other overgods of the divine kingdom of Ping Tian. Ling Hogong and the other overgods became stunned when they received Jian Chen's message. Ling Hogong immediately halted. The other overgods did not stop immediately after receiving Jian Chen's warning, but they did slow down. Master Chanlong, who was just about to reach the first hut, smiled slyly. He came to a sudden halt before rapidly retreating. It was also at this moment that the space ripped open silently. A streak of light that was several dozen meters in length emerged and cleaved towards everyone with surging sword qi. The expressions of all the overgods changed drastically from the sudden turn of events. Before they could even curse the slyness of Master Chanlong, they all came to a halt and retreated even faster than they had run before. Not everyone managed to escape. Under the sword qi, over a dozen overgods became immobilized. They were unable to dodge the sword qi, so they could only take it on forcefully. The overgods were all experienced, so they bellowed out together. They used their entire strength to launch their strongest attack towards the sword qi in an attempt to disperse it with the force of over a dozen people. However, God King Duanmu had left behind the sword qi before he passed away. It was so powerful that even God Kings were unable to endure it, let alone overgods. The huge sword qi tore through the attacks from the overgods like they were nothing and sliced down in a flash. 8 overgods turned to dust silently, and not even any blood or flesh was left behind. The other overgods were closer to the edge of the sword qi, so they had not been directly struck and fortunately survived. However, they all vomited blood and were heavily injured. 3 of them were only left with a small part of their body. They were extremely heavily wounded. "Master Chanlong, you're despicable." The surviving overgods all became furious as they swore at Master Chanlong before immediately ingesting a large number of healing pills to recover. The other overgods who had managed to retreat in time looked at Master Chanlong furiously. They understood very well that they had fallen for Master Chanlong's schemes. If they had been a little slower before, they probably would have died to the huge sword qi. Chapter 1748. Liquid Lime. Master Chanlong sighed and said sorrowfully, "I failed to sense that God King Duanmu had prepared something there. If I hadn't reacted in time, the sword qi would have killed me as well. I am deeply sorry for what you've suffered. Master Chanlong, it looks like you want us all to die so that you can enjoy God King Duanmu's legacy all by yourself." Yang Kai from the divine kingdom of Ping Tian said coldly. He was a late overgod and did not fear Master Chanlong. Master Chanlong said innocently, "You're mistaken. I never had such intentions. I did say before that I was only going ahead to check. I never said it would be safe. It was you who charged over." The overgods were speechless with that. Master Chanlong was telling the truth. They could only blame themselves. However, everyone's attitude towards Master Chanlong changed slightly after this incident. They remained cautious about him, no longer trusting him like before. Master Chanlong did not care about this at all. The items God King Duanmu left behind were just far too attractive. Compared to them, fame and prestige were nothing. "Thank you, Brother Jian Chen." Ling Hogong's grateful voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. All the other overgods from the divine kingdom of Ping Tian thanked Jian Chen secretly. If it were not for Jian Chen's warning, some of them probably would have died to the sword qi as well. "Brother Jian Chen, how did you know that there was danger ahead?" Yang Kai also asked secretly. "Senior Yang Kai, you're overestimating me. How would I know whether there's danger or not? I just felt like these 3 stone huts are a little too simple," replied Jian Chen. The other overgods had heard his words as well. "Sigh, looks like Brother Jian Chen is the calm one. We were too reckless earlier. None of us were able to resist God King Duanmu's treasures, so our desire clouded our vigilance." Bing Lu sighed gently. They clearly understood what Jian Chen was trying to say. They had lost their usual calm due to their attraction to the treasure in the room and the provocation of the people around them. Jian Chen said nothing more. Instead, he stared at where the sword qi had swung down from before sternly. He was quite disturbed. He had just witnessed 8 overgods being reduced to nothingness before a strand of sword chi that was enough to cause everyone present to pale. They did not even leave behind their space rings. The other overgods only managed to survive because they were towards the edge of the attack. They had not received the full blow of the sword chi, or they probably would not be alive either. Is this the strength of a God King? Even God King Duanmu, who failed to make the rankings of the God King's throne, is so powerful. Just how terrifyingly powerful are Adriana and Protector Xueqi then? Jian Chen thought. He could not help but think of the 2 God Kings he had encountered on the Tianyuan continent. The 2 of them were experts who were ranked on the God King's throne, making them much more powerful than Duanmu. Protector Xueqi, in particular, was even ranked 9th. In the past, even though Jian Chen felt that Adriana and Protector Xueqi were unfathomable, even though he knew they were God Kings, he had no concept of a God King at all. Only after the sword chi from God King Duanmu appeared did he gain a deeper understanding towards the terrifying power of Adriana and Protector Xueqi. In his eyes, overgods were experts who could reign supreme over an entire region. A divine kingdom only possessed a little over a dozen overgods, yet they were so weak before God King Duanmu's sword chi. They were not even as great as ants. Everyone, I will continue checking for dangers, Master Chanlong said at this moment. The inscriptions on the disc in his hand flickered rapidly before hovering before him. Master Chanlong stared at the disc. He formed a seal with his hand, advancing towards the stone hut as if he had predicted anything. Everyone no longer trusted Master Chanlong as much after the previous punishment. As a result, they did not follow him when they saw him checking for dangers as they were afraid that they would fall for his tricks again. After all, no one present was as great as Master Chanlong at formations. If Master Chanlong really did want to use the formations here against them, they would struggle to sense it. Master Chanlong got closer and closer to the first hut under everyone's gazes. When he arrived at the position before, a strand of sword chi did not appear from the space there. Clearly, there was only that single strand of sword chi from before. In the end, Master Chanlong arrived before the stone hut successfully. He pressed his hand against the stone door slowly and pushed it gently. The door immediately opened, and Master Chanlong beamed, entering it in a flash. Did he just enter like that? The several dozen overgods were all stunned when they saw how Master Chanlong just disappeared into the stone hut. They found it rather difficult to believe that he had entered the hut so easily. However, they all responded accordingly. Without any hesitation, they all charged into the stone hut as well. This time, they did not come across any obstacles. Clearly, there was only that single strand of sword chi from before. Jian Chen, Ling Hogong and the other overgods all entered the stone hut as well. When Jian Chen stepped through the entrance, the landscape around him changed. He had arrived in an extremely large space and around him were the several dozen overgods who had entered before him. The stone hut only seemed to be around 10 square meters in size, but clearly, God King Duanmu had modified its interior with his laws of space, creating a miniature world. That's liquid lime. Suddenly, someone cried out. There was a basin-sized ditch near a few boulders. It was filled with a milky liquid that gave off a delightful fragrance. It really is liquid lime. Liquid lime is said to be able to cleanse godhood experts of impurities and can refine their origin energy. It can also suppress various poisons and remove any resistance developed from ingesting large numbers of heavenly resources. It's extremely valuable, where every drop is priceless. That's not all to it. If the liquid lime is used on those below godhood, just a single drop will be enough to alter their constitution and even strengthen their ability to comprehend, making comprehending the laws of the world much easier. Liquid lime doesn't only increase the affinity to comprehend for those below deity. Even for overgods, it is effective. High-quality liquid lime can even help god kings, making them invaluable. The only downside is that the increase in ability to comprehend is only temporarily. Once the effects subside, everything returns to normal. That's a huge basin of liquid lime. That's at least 1,000 drops. Look at it. God King Duanmu's a supreme god king after all, so how could he be shabby? The overgods present all became filled with eagerness with the appearance of the basin of liquid lime. All of them charged over joyfully. Before they even arrived before it, they had already taken out various bottles, ready to store the liquid lime away. Everyone wanted the liquid lime. At the same time, no one wished for someone else to be faster than them, so the person at the very front naturally became the target of attacks. An overgod who had comprehended the laws of wind was at the forefront, so he drew in the attacks of several dozen overgods. Several dozen terrifying attacks shot towards the late overgod with surging energy. Chapter 1749. A fierce struggle. The expression of the late overgod at the forefront, who comprehended the laws of wind, changed drastically. Even though there were only a few late overgods in the group, he would still become heavily injured from the several dozen attacks, or even directly die. After all, a few of the attacks came from late overgods as well. The liquid lime was precious, but it was nothing compared to his life. At that moment, the overgod at the very front immediately gave up on the liquid lime without any hesitation at all. With a single movement, he left behind an afterimage and reappeared several hundred meters away, avoiding all their attacks. With his departure, the overgods at the very front became Yongkai from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, Master Chanlong, and 5 other late overgods. The 7 of them basically moved at the same speed as they charged towards the liquid lime. Liquid lime was useful to even overgods. What truly attracted their attention was the liquid lime's effect that increased one's ability to comprehend, as that would make comprehending the laws of the world much easier. If they were lucky, they could even become god kings thanks to it. However, liquid lime was very rare and precious. Basically, all the clans and sects that were far more powerful had monopolized it, making it very difficult for them to purchase any. They would naturally become interested in such a large basin of liquid lime. In their eyes, the liquid lime was a chance to reach God King. Even though it was only a tiny sliver of a chance, they were still greatly attracted to it. Powerful origin energy and laws pulsed in the surroundings as the several dozen mid and early overgods struck out at that moment. They launched powerful attacks towards the 7 late overgods at the very front in an attempt to stop them. Ling Hogong had struck out as well, swinging his sword to send a sword chi directly towards Master Chanlong. It was chaotic. At that moment, no one cared whether they were fighting against mid or late overgods. Their desire for the liquid lime had drawn all of them over. All the 7 late overgods at the very front used protective treasures to block the attacks. They did not slow down at all and even sped up instead. On the other hand, a formation disc hovered above Master Chanlong's head. It was immediately activated, and it enveloped him in a powerful protective formation. The formation remained around him the entire time, moving along with him. With a series of booms, the attack struck the 7 late overgods at the forefront. Their protective treasures and formations flickered. Aside from Master Chanlong, everyone else paled. They had all endured attacks from several experts at the same level as them, so even with defensive treasures, it was impossible for them to emerge unscathed. However, the 7 overgods did not slow down at all after taking on these attacks. Instead, they accelerated after being hit and arrived before the stone basin with the liquid lime in a single moment. The stone basin was only the size of a large bowl, yet there were 7 of them in total. It was impossible for them to all crowd around the basin, so they all attacked the people around them in order to collect the liquid lime. They wanted to force back their competitors. The disturbance was huge from the fight between several overgods. The terrifying shockwaves reverberated towards the basin, and it immediately cracked. The violent energy splayed the liquid lime into the air, splitting the liquid into hundreds of globs. As the energy spread out, the liquid lime also flew out in all directions like scattered blossoms. "Take the liquid lime. Every man for himself," someone cried out. With that, no one cared about the late overgods anymore. They all scattered in every direction as their eyes burned with desire. They chased the scattering liquid lime as quickly as possible as various jade bottles appeared in their hands. The late overgod who had comprehended the laws of wind was the fastest. No one was faster than him in terms of speed, so he collected 3 globs, totaling to over 20 droplets. Jian Chen looked around, and his eyes narrowed very soon. His eyes lit up. 2 globs of liquid lime, 1 large and 1 small, directly flew in his direction. However, 3 other overgods approached the 2 globs rapidly. They were clearly targeting these globs. Jian Chen charged over without any hesitation at full speed. With a flip of his hand, a jade bottle appeared, and he immediately scooped up the 2 globs of liquid lime. The eyes of the 3 overgods who originally wanted to take the liquid lime turned cold. They glared at Jian Chen and did not leave to go collect the other liquid lime. Instead, they continued onwards in the same direction and directly encircled Jian Chen. They all wanted the larger glob that Jian Chen had taken away. That single glob of liquid lime was 3 or 5 times larger than the smaller one. A gleam of cold light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes when he sensed their movement. With a thought, the 2 strands of profound sword qi immediately appeared, radiating with sword intent. The sword qi was so powerful that it drew over the attention of all the overgods present. They all looked towards Jian Chen in fear. It had already been a year since Jian Chen last used the profound sword qi. Jian Chen had already fully recovered the power of his soul during that period of time, so he could use 2 strands of profound sword qi again. The expressions of the 3 overgods who charged towards Jian Chen changed abruptly when they saw the profound sword qi appear. They all came to a halt as fear filled their eyes as well. They were 2 early overgods and 1 mid-overgod. However, they no longer dared to approach Jian Chen as his profound sword qi had appeared. Jian Chen did not shoot his profound sword qi. Instead, he let them hover above his head to deter the people around him. Afterwards, he clasped his hands towards the 3 overgods and said, "I only want these 2 globs. There are still a few more in the surroundings that have not been collected, so if you continue wasting time here, you might have to leave empty-handed." The 3 overgods mulled over the thought. In the end, they did not risk trying to take what Jian Chen had collected. They scattered to fight over the few remaining globs of liquid lime in the surroundings. In just a few seconds, the basin of liquid lime had all been collected. The late overgods naturally collected the most, with the overgod who comprehended the laws of wind in particular. He seemed to have collected over 50 droplets. Of course, not everyone managed to collect something. The weaker overgods were left empty-handed. They failed to even get a single droplet, and they had even suffered heavy injuries that left them pale-faced. The overgods who had been injured by the hidden sword qi earlier failed to collect anything as well as they were still injured. Their faces were extremely sunken. Jian Chen put his bottle of liquid lime away happily. Although he did not obtain a lot of it, he still managed to acquire around 20 droplets. He was satisfied with that. He knew that his only method of fending off overgods was through his profound sword qi. If he used up both strands, he would no longer be an overgod's opponent. It was already quite impressive for him to be able to obtain around 20 droplets. Chapter 1750. The Chaotic Heaven Sword Style. After the liquid lime had all been collected, everyone scattered in search of their own fortuitous encounters. They scoured the land. The overgods of the divine kingdom of Pingtian scattered and headed off in different directions. However, Ling Hogong and Jian Chen moved together as they discussed the sword. Jian Chen and Ling Hogong shared their experiences on cultivation as they searched through the space. Although they could use the senses of their soul, there were some things that could avoid this detection method. Such things could only be found by the naked eye at a close distance. Boom! At this moment, there was a rumble in the distance, and an intense battle erupted. Over a dozen overgods fought against each other and more people joined the fight. Even 3 late overgods took part in the devastating battle. It's the Chaotic Heavens Sword Style. Someone has obtained the Chaotic Heavens Sword Style. A vague cry rang out along with the constant booms. The Chaotic Heavens Sword Style? Jian Chen murmured softly. Clearly, this was the first time he had heard of something like that. On the other hand, a gleam of light flashed through Ling Hogong's eyes as desire appeared in them. He said, "The Chaotic Heavens Sword Style is the cultivation method God King Duanmu practiced. He also used it for his comprehension of the laws of the sword. It's not just a cultivation method. It possesses several powerful sword techniques as well. It's said that an expert of the primordial realm created it. I never expected that it would appear here." As he said that, the battle in the distance became more and more intense. There were now 5 late overgods taking part, including Yang Kai from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The battle for the sword style was devastating, covering many people with blood and wounds. The person who had originally obtained the Chaotic Heaven Sword Style was a mid-god, but he was immediately faced with the attacks of 5 late overgods. In the end, he directly died on the spot, while the sword style ended up in the hands of a late overgod. However, as soon as the late overgod obtained the Chaotic Heaven Sword Style, he received the attacks of everyone present, becoming heavily injured in a single instance. In the end, he threw out several defensive formation discs and blew up his own weapon to finally break out, fleeing with his injured body. Suddenly, an azure figure shot over hurriedly from afar. It moved extremely quickly, catching up with the late overgod in a single moment. It caught the injured late overgod off guard and pierced his head before fleeing after grabbing the chaotic heaven's sword style. He left the miniature world in the blink of an eye. He was so fast that the other late overgods were unable to catch up. Ao Tong, don't you think you'll have any peace once you make it out of here? Someone roared out furiously from behind. Their voice was filled with regret. To no surprise, the person who had stolen the chaotic heaven's sword style in the end was the late overgod who had comprehended the laws of wind. Jian Chen was astounded as he watched on from afar. A late overgod had actually fallen just like that. He was the first late overgod to die in God King Duanmu's dwelling. At this moment, the world began to tremble violently. The sky began to collapse as the ground cracked. Violent laws of space wreaked havoc, causing the entire place to shake wildly. The space in the distance was reduced to nothingness at a visible rate. It had actually vanished as if a terrifying beast had devoured it, leading to a huge commotion. Oh no, the world's collapsing. This world has existed for too long. After so much time without God King Duanmu's supportive laws of space, it can't endure the fierce attacks, run, or will be reduced to nothingness along with the space. We'll be doomed. The overgods all cried out as they flew towards the entrance quickly. Jian Chen and Ling Hogong reacted in the first moment as well, fleeing towards the entrance as quickly as they could. Large expanses of space collapsed behind the two of them, reduced to nothingness. Spatial cracks littered everywhere, making it extremely terrifying. The space collapsed extremely quickly, basically tailing Jian Chen and Ling Hogong. If the two of them had been slightly slower, they would have been devoured mercilessly. Further behind, there were two early overgods far away from the entrance. Coupled with the fact that they flew relatively slowly, they directly vanished in the collapsing space under Jian Chen and Ling Hogong's gazes. Their fates were unknown. Jian Chen and Ling Hogong secretly gritted their teeth and pushed their speeds to the limit. They seemed to have become faint blurs as they charged towards the entrance as quickly as possible. Jian Chen had even made the preparations to use the linear lightning release at any time. Fortunately, the two of them reached the entrance unscathed and made their way out instantly, vanishing from the collapsing world. Only two of the stone huts remained outside. The first stone hut had been reduced to dust. A few more overgods were lost among those who gathered outside the hut. Aside from the mid and late overgods who had died during the battle for the chaotic heaven's sword style, for overgods had vanished because they could not escape from the collapsing space in time. Ao Tong really isn't here. Looks like he has left the dwelling with the chaotic heaven's sword style. A stern voice rang out. It came from a late overgod who had fought for the chaotic heaven's sword style. What can we do? He has comprehended the laws of wind. If he wants to leave, we can't stop him, said Yang Kai with an extremely sunken face. It was said that a primordial realm expert created the chaotic heaven's sword style. It was an unimaginable treasure to the overgods, enough for them to forsake the future of their clans. Everyone desired it. At this moment, the heavy smell of blood suddenly appeared. The overgods who had just emerged from the first stone hut all frowned. When they looked in the direction of the bloody smell, they saw over 100 corpses before the second and third stone huts. The corpses were incomplete. All of them had suffered extremely horrific deaths, either losing most of their bodies or losing their heads completely. The missing body parts seemed to have vanished altogether as well, without anything remaining. These gods sure are bold, an overgod said coldly when he saw what had happened. All the corpses there belonged to gods. When they were still in the first stone hut, the gods had tried to enter the second and third stone huts boldly. Master Chanlong chuckled. I was just worrying about how difficult the traps God King Duanmu set would be to dismantle. These gods sure are helpful, helping us a great deal by removing the traps God King Duanmu set. Looking at the handprints on the stone doors, clearly, a few gods have entered. The two huts are already safe now. Chapter 1751. A God King's corpse this time. No one doubted Master Chanlong because the handprints on the stone door were clear evidence that people had already entered the place. The traps God King Duanmu had set around probably only had a single attack. The first hut was the best example. The remaining overgods all entered the second hut. There was also a miniature world within the second hut. Moreover, God King Duanmu's laws of space had modified it, so it was much larger than the first hut. Mountains obscured the space, and there was a range of mountains that spanned as far as the eye could see. Sharp sword chi radiated from the mountains with a sense of supremacy. They were extremely powerful. There were a few mirror-like rock faces among the endless stretch of mountains. A few slashes were left on the rock faces, which were the source of the sword chi that permeated the surroundings. The sharp intent made all the overgods shiver. A few gods were scattered before the rock face with the slashes. All their gazes were fixated on it. They wanted to comprehend the laws of the sword within. With a boom, a few gods slashed at the mountains up ahead. They wanted to take the slashes on the rock face away with them. However, the mountains had already changed from being soaked in the sword chi for so long. They had become extraordinarily tough, so the full-powered attacks of the gods only left a mark on its surface. Severing the entire mountain and taking it away was basically impossible. This should be where God King Duanmu comprehended the sword, said Ling Hogong. His gaze was filled with joy. To him, this place was basically a supreme, treasured land. This was because he comprehended the laws of the sword. If he continued his comprehension here, it would definitely become much easier for him. A gleam of light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes as he too became excited. The sword slashes possessed the residue of what God King Duanmu had comprehended from the laws of the sword. To him they would be just too helpful. They could assist him in comprehending the laws of the sword and reach the partial achievement of sword spirit in an even shorter amount of time. The overgods left very quickly. They had already understood this place. It was only where God King Duanmu comprehended the laws of the sword. It was not beneficial to them, nor were there any treasures, so it naturally did not attract them. In the blink of an eye, all the overgods aside from Jian Chen and Ling Hogong had left. Jian Chen, we both comprehend the laws of the sword, so this place is basically a blessed land to the two of us. Why don't we cultivate here for a while? Ling Hogong asked. He wanted to stay behind. Jian Chen, leave here immediately. Go to the third hut. If I've guessed correctly, the third hut contains what I need. At this moment, Fairy Hao Yu's voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. Jian Chen clasped his fist towards Ling Hogong without any change in expression at all and said, "There's still one more hut left. I want to try my luck there for any impressive treasures and see what I can get." Ling Hogong clasped his fist back at Jian Chen and said, "I won't be going to the third hut. I want to cultivate here for a while in hopes that my comprehension of the laws of the sword will increase. Jian Chen, I wish you luck." Jian Chen left after bidding farewell to Ling Hogong. He looked towards the third stone hut. The ground outside the third hut was covered with corpses of gods. All of them were missing body parts, having suffered miserable deaths. Jian Chen casually glanced past the corpses, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. His gaze fell onto one of their faces. He just so happened to recognize the deceased god. He was one of the mid-gods from the Weiner clan who had hurried over when he, Mo Ling, and Ando Fu had opened the entrance to the dwelling. Close to him was a second person that Jian Chen recognized. He was the second mid-god from the Weiner clan. I never thought that the two mid-gods of the Weiner clan would both die here. Jian Chen sighed secretly as he felt pity. Then he made his way over the many corpses and entered the third hut. Compared to the two huts prior, the space within the third hut was much smaller. When Jian Chen entered, he discovered that all the overgods had stopped there. Their gazes were all fixed ahead with mixed emotions. Jian Chen followed their gazes, and his eyes narrowed suddenly as well. Afterwards, his face also became filled with mixed emotions. There was admiration as well as pity. Before him sat a middle-aged man in green robes on a jade pedestal. His eyes were closed, and although he radiated with invisible sword chi that was filled with the presence of supremacy, he did not have any presence of life at all. God King Duanmu. Jian Chen's feeling became extremely mixed when he saw the middle-aged man. He was a supreme expert who had made it onto the God King's throne. Although he did not make the rankings, his strength was still shocking. There were barely anyone at God King who was his opponent. However, such a glorious expert had died in his own dwelling. Besides that, it was thanks to the assistance of God King Duanmu that his way of the sword could reach sword spirit. If it were not for the mark that God King Duanmu had left in his disciples' dwelling to pass on his laws, it would not have been so easy for him to reach sword spirit. I never thought that the third stone hut would actually be where God King Duanmu passed away. Master Chanlong sighed gently as he stared at the lifeless God King before him with mixed feelings. His voice was filled with pity. God King Duanmu is extremely powerful. Probably only those who have been ranked on the God King's throne can defeat him, and it's only defeating him. God King Duanmu has the laws of space, so if he wants to flee, he'll be even faster than the laws of wind. Killing him is almost impossible. God King Duanmu is so powerful, so I wonder who killed him? Was it a supreme expert from the top rankings of the God King's throne? Or was it a primordial realm expert? If it was a primordial realm expert, God King Duanmu would indeed struggle to escape. What a pity, what a pity. If God King Duanmu did not die, there was an extremely great chance of him reaching the primordial realm and standing at the very top of the world, only beneath the heavens. A few overgods sighed in amazement as their gazes towards God King Duanmu were filled with admiration. This was the admiration for someone powerful. Even though God King Duanmu was already dead, the glory he had left behind still affected them. There seems to be words beside God King Duanmu. An overgod said suddenly. Everyone looked over. Indeed, there were words carved on the ground. Since you are able to make it here, you are fated to make it here. You must swear to the world that after you obtain this king's legacy and become accomplished in cultivation that you personally slay Xueqi, a vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult. The expressions of all the overgods changed after they read these words. All of their faces had even become filled with fear when they saw the words Empyrean demon cult. And it was like they feared and dreaded the Empyrean demon cult dearly. Chapter 1752. A foot planted in the primordial realm. Jian Chen also became doubtful inside when he saw all their expressions. Although he had never heard of the Empyrean demon cult before, he could tell from their reactions that it was probably a powerful organization. For a moment, the surroundings descended into a strange silence. All the overgods stared at the words before God King Duanmu, and the light in their eyes flickered uneasily. Further away were some gods. They had entered the place before the overgods, but they had been forced far away ever since the overgods entered because they were only gods. They did not dare to get any closer. A long while later, an overgod finally sighed gently. I never thought that God King Duanmu had actually died to the hands of the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Xueqi, and that you'd have to swear to the world to become enemies with him in the future to inherit God King Duanmu's legacy. Another overgod also shook his head and said gently, with that being the case, obtaining God King Duanmu's legacy will lead to the Empyrean demon cult hunting you down. Is there still anyone who wants the legacy? I'd rather turn down the legacy than become enemies with the Empyrean demon cult because it will only lead to death. The Empyrean demon cult is just too terrifying. We cannot afford to offend them. The overgods all sighed regretfully. All of them feared the Empyrean demon cult dearly, which prevented them from accepting God King Duanmu's legacy. Can you only obtain God King Duanmu's legacy by becoming enemies with the Empyrean demon cult? God King Duanmu is dead, yet we can't even obtain a legacy from someone who's no longer alive even with our strength? An energetic voice rang out. The speaker was a middle-aged man in red robes. Clearly, he wanted to break the rules that God King Duanmu had set down before he had died and forcefully take the legacy. Uncertainty immediately flickered through the eyes of many overgods when they heard that. Clearly, they were wavering. I do in fact admire God King Duanmu, except the rules he set are just too tough. Basically, no one would accept them. Why leave the legacy here when we can take it out with us and allow your glory to continue within the saints' world? You never know. There really might be a day when we can avenge you, said an old man. With that, he took out a low-quality saint artifact from his space ring. He bowed politely towards God King Duanmu's corpse and said with a gruff voice, "Apologies, God King Duanmu." With that, he sent the flying sword out. Swish! The flying sword turned into a silver streak of light that flew directly towards God King Duanmu's corpse. The eyes of all the overgods present shone brightly. They stared at the flying sword as they gathered their power secretly in the meantime. Once they confirmed there were no dangers, they would charge over as quickly as possible. The flying sword moved extremely quickly, reaching 3 meters away from God King Duanmu in a single instance. However, at this moment, the terrifying power of laws suddenly appeared, enveloping God King Duanmu's corpse as a huge light screen. When the flying sword collided with the power of laws, it was reduced to dust silently. At the same time, God King Duanmu's corpse faded under the power of laws. His corpse also underwent a drastic change at that moment. The green-robed, middle-aged man vanished and a white, seated skeleton replaced it. The skeleton had a space ring on its finger, and there was a bead the size of a pigeon's egg in its head. It shone with a faint, golden light. God King Duanmu had already been dead for several 100,000 years, so his flesh had already rotted away. He only used a technique before his death to maintain his image. Once the technique was removed, his true remains would naturally be exposed. The power of laws that had suddenly appeared clearly destroyed God King Duanmu's image. It's a golden core of laws. It's a golden core of laws. The expressions of all the overgods changed the moment they saw the bead. They cried out uncontrollably as they were now extremely shocked. No one paid any attention to the space ring, as they had been expecting it. It said that once you comprehend the laws of the world to an extremely profound level, you will be able to condense a golden core of laws. At the same time, the golden core of laws represents a primordial realm expert. I never thought that God King Duanmu would have actually condensed a golden core of laws. Doesn't that mean he broke through God King and reached the primordial realm? Some of the overgods said. They were unable to remain composed. No. God King Duanmu's golden core of laws is rather different. It said that a primordial realm expert's golden core of laws shines with extremely bright light, while God King Duanmu's golden core of laws is dull and without the luster of gold. He was clearly in the process of going from God King to the primordial realm. He only had a foot planted in the primordial realm while the other foot was still planted at God King, said Yang Kai. All the overgods were perturbed. None of them had thought that God King Duanmu already had a foot planted in the primordial realm. He just needed to overcome this transition. When his golden core of laws had been completely condensed, he would become a true primordial realm expert. However, everyone soon became deeply attracted by God King Duanmu's legacy once again. They all began to attack the power of laws that protected God King Duanmu's remains. It did not matter if he had a foot planted in the primordial realm. He was already dead, reduced to a skeleton. The power of laws was very powerful, and it was enough to turn a low-quality saint artifact to dust in a single moment. However, as long as they did not approach the power of laws, it would not be able to harm them, so they could tell that the power of laws only acted as protection and could not actively attack them. The overgods all stood far away as they sent sword chi or beams of energy towards the power of laws. They wanted to waste it away bit by bit. For a while, terrifying shockwaves of energy rolled through the surroundings as booms constantly rang out. The overgods did not hold back as they attempted to smash through the protective power of laws. Fairy Hao Yu, is there what you need here? Jian Chen did not attack the power of laws and spoke to Fairy Hao Yu instead. I never thought that Duanmu had already broken through and condensed a golden core of laws. That has me taken aback. What I need is Duanmu's space ring. As a supreme god king, it's impossible for his space ring to not contain supreme-grade divine crystals. There might even be 5-colored divine crystals. Aside from that, there's some energy that still hasn't dispersed from the remains, which will be helpful for me. Jian Chen, I need you to buy time for me so that I can approach his remains, replied Fairy Hao Yu. At this moment, there was a flash of golden light. It pierced through the forehead of an overgod instantly, killing the early overgod on the spot. The golden streak of light continued towards a second early overgod after killing the first one. However, the death of the first early overgod had already made everyone cautious. The second overgod immediately roared out, and the power of laws surged from him. He directly swung his axe towards the golden streak of light. Boom! The early overgod immediately vomited blood and was blown backwards while the golden streak of light had stopped as well. It was actually a flying sword that glimmered with golden light. Chapter 1753. Opportunity. All the overgods who attacked the power of laws that protected God King Duanmu stopped. They stared at the hovering golden sword sharply as they became rather stern. Just a single flying sword had claimed the life of an early overgod, and it had even knocked back a second overgod, causing the overgod to vomit blood. Even the late overgods slightly feared such strength. More importantly, they had not sensed where the flying sword had come from at all. Jian Chen stared at the flying sword and frowned. He became suspicious and thought, why does that flying sword seem so familiar? Who is launching sneak attacks? Please show yourself, Yang Kai called out. Humph, what sneak attack? That sounds horrible. Bao Bao is killing you out in the open. A rather childish voice rang out. The voice stunned all the overgods. They collectively turned around and stared at the golden flying sword in surprise. Clearly, the voice had come from the sword. It was also at this moment that a young girl suddenly appeared above the sword. She seemed only 4 or 5 years old. Her skin was white, and she was extremely cute. However, she was currently glaring at the overgods furiously. It's actually a sword spirit. Is this sword God King Duanmu's treasure? Bing Lu said with some surprise. Jian Chen came to a realization as well. The reason why he found the sword to be rather familiar was because it was the sword God King Duanmu wielded. You do have some insight. Correct, God King Duanmu is Bao Bao's master. Since you're unwilling to follow his rules, you obviously lose the right to master's legacy. Please leave immediately. Bao Bao will never show any mercy to anyone who disturbs master's slumber. Bao Bao will kill them all, the sword spirit said coldly. Although she did not seem old, her childish voice was filled with killing intent. Clearly, the sword had followed God King Duanmu for countless years. It had gone through battles everywhere with him and had grown with him. Ha 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 ha, a flying sword is actually threatening us. This is just hilarious, a late overgod sneered before directly charging towards the golden sword. He grabbed the handle, attempting to subdue the sword. The other overgods moved at that moment as well. They all charged towards the flying sword. It was God King Duanmu's treasure, so to them, it was something that could watch over and protect their entire clan. Jian Chen, it's extremely likely that God King Duanmu's legacy is related to the flying sword. It might even lie in the artifact spirit's hand. If you want it, I can help you obtain it once I recover my body, said Fairy Hao Yu. Fairy Hao Yu, that's not a priority. Let's think about how we can get you close to God King Duanmu's remains instead, said Jian Chen. He did not become interested at all. He had come to God King Duanmu's dwelling this time mainly because of Fairy Hao Yu as well as to find some treasures for his cultivation so that he could break through with the chaotic body as soon as possible. God King Duanmu's legacy was just some cultivation methods and battle skills. For cultivation methods, he had the chaotic body. Let alone God King Duanmu's cultivation method, but even the cultivation method of a few primordial realm experts would not interest him. For battle skills, he had the ones from the artifact spirit. Many of the battle skills were created by the old master of the sword spirits. He had even grasped the god-tier sword technique, the profound sword chi. He naturally felt no interest towards a god king's sword techniques. Several dozen overgods began fighting against the golden sword on the other side. Not all the overgods had taken part in this battle, but close to 30 people were now involved in a fierce struggle. After all, the sword spirit controlled the flying sword. She had no need to fear anyone present if she fought against them individually, but she could only flee when up against close to 30 overgods. The sword turned into a streak of light as it flitted about, dodging everyone's attacks and only fighting back once in a while. However, those with insight could tell with a single glance that the flying sword had completely lost the upper hand. It completely relied on its speed to dodge and weave between the overgods. The shockwaves from their fighting are too intense. I won't be able to endure it just as a soul, so you have to find a way to stop them from fighting. Only then can I come out. Fairy Hao Yu said grimly. But there's a powerful barrier of laws around God King Duanmu's remains. How will you get past that? Jian Chen asked with a frown. I'll pay a price and temporarily suppress the power. However, I'll need half a minute. Jian Chen became stern when he heard that. He knew that Fairy Hao Yu wanted him to buy half a minute for her. During this time, she could not afford to suffer any injuries at all. After all, she was just too fragile as a soul. Even an Origin Realm expert could heavily wound her, let alone overgods. Although half a minute was short, he had to endure the attacks of all the overgods. Not a single overgod present would let Fairy Hao Yu approach God King Duanmu's remains. Jian Chen looked around and discovered that there were over a dozen overgods who did not take part in the fight against the flying sword. At the same time, extremely terrifying pulses of energy were emitted from the battle between the sword and the overgods. Even the gods struggled to gain their footing, so it was inconvenient for Fairy Hao Yu's soul to move around under these circumstances. At this moment, the flying sword turned into a golden streak of light and vanished from the space in a single instance. It had fled outside. Clearly, it was not the opponent of close to 30 overgods. The overgods did not give up. They all pursued it. The power of laws protected God King Duanmu's remains anyway, so no one could enter. As a result, they did not worry about someone taking away God King Duanmu's space ring in the meantime at all. In the blink of an eye, only Jian Chen and the other overgods who did not take part in the fight remained. A few of them were early overgods and knew that before mid or even late overgods, it would be very difficult for them to obtain the flying sword. As a result, They saved their strength and accumulated power instead, preparing for one last fight. This is a great opportunity. Jian Chen's eyes lit up. He knew that opportunity had presented itself. However, he did not move immediately. Instead, he said to the overgods of the divine kingdom of Pingtian, Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, Feng Buell, there's something I want to discuss with you. Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell were all early overgods, so they did not take part in the battle for the flying sword. Chapter 1754. How use might Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell all looked towards the seated Jian Chen when they heard his voice. Jian Chen, what do you have to discuss with us? Feel free to go ahead, the hunchbacked Bing Lu smiled. Jian Chen, what is it? Is it good or bad? If it's something good, you can't forget about me, Guhan Shui giggled. She spoke like Jian Chen was an old friend of hers. Jian Chen, feel free to mention it. If it's within our abilities, we will definitely assist you, Feng Buell also replied. No one else knew about their conversation, but Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, and Feng Buell all treated Jian Chen rather politely. They were extremely friendly, unwilling to give up any opportunity. Jian Chen's cultivation was a great weakness in their eyes, so if he really started fighting, it would be impossible for him to defeat an early overgod with just the laws of the sword at overgod. However, they knew even more that as long as Jian Chen had some time, he would be able to cultivate his way up. Once he reached the same level of cultivation as his comprehension, there would barely be anyone who was his opponent at the same level thanks to the strength of the laws of the sword. He might even become a second Ling Hogong, using his laws of the sword to reach a stalemate against a mid-overgod as an early overgod. If Jian Chen's terrifying sword chi that could kill early overgods instantly was considered, there would probably be no mid-overgods that were Jian Chen's opponent. The three overgods would naturally try to get as close to an expert like that as possible. They spoke to him as if even if they could not befriend him, they wanted to avoid becoming enemies. After a while of silence, Jian Chen replied secretly, Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, Feng Buell, I hope that you can assist me by keeping three early overgods busy to the best of your abilities. Jian Chen had asked the three of them because he trusted them the most out of the overgods present. Although a few of the other overgods did want to befriend him, he simply did not trust him, even if there were a few from the royal city of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jian Chen did not dare to ask Yang Kai even more so, as he was a late overgod. He was just too powerful, so Jian Chen could not afford to trust him. Keep three early overgods busy? Jian Chen, what are you trying to do? Guhan Shui asked in surprise. You will naturally understand in detail later. What is important is that it's extremely likely for the overgods to attack me. I only need you to keep three overgods busy for half a minute. As remuneration, I will give you a soul recovery pill each, said Jian Chen. What? A soul recovery pill? The three overgods were all startled when they heard that. They became filled with disbelief. Soul recovery pills were extremely valuable. Only a single pill was needed for an early overgod to recover all of their power of the soul in a few seconds. It was extremely valuable, to the point where it could not be purchased in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Aside from the soul recovery pill, I'll give you each 2 droplets of liquid lime, and I'll owe you a personal favor. All you need to do is keep 3 early overgods busy for half a minute, said Jian Chen. He did not hold back at all to allow Fairy Hao Yu to approach God King Duanmu's remains. All right, we'll agree. We'll keep 3 overgods busy for half a minute, but we'll be helpless against the other overgods. After a moment of hesitation, Bing Lu, Feng Buell, and Guhan Shui all agreed. Although they could vaguely sense that Jian Chen wanted to lay his hands on God King Duanmu's remains, they did not really care. They knew that it was impossible for them to obtain God King Duanmu's space ring and his legacy. Even if they managed to stop Jian Chen, the objects would still end up in the hands of a late overgod. With their strength at early overgod, it was very difficult for them to benefit at all. If that were the case, they would be better off agreeing to Jian Chen. Not only could they improve their relationship with him, but they could also benefit from him. Of course, what they truly valued was the favor that Jian Chen owed them. Jian Chen was extremely frank as well. He gave the 3 of them the soul recovery pills and the droplets of liquid lime on the spot. Jian Chen only had 10 soul recovery pills in total. He had given Ando Fu and Mo Ling 1 each and split the remaining pills between him and Xin Jian, so he and Xin Jian both got 4 each. He had already consumed 2 of the 4 pills earlier, so he only possessed 2 pills on him. As a result, he had taken 2 pills from Shen Jian out of the 3 he had given to the 3 overgods. He kept 1 last pill on him just in case. Jian Chen could utilize the pills he had given away better by consuming them himself, allowing him to kill 6 early overgods in total. However, he needed a period of time to recover the power of the soul after consuming a pill. Jian Chen definitely would not have the time to recover in the upcoming battle. As a result, he needed the 3 overgods to keep 3 other overgods busy so that the pressure on him would be reduced. The only thing he possessed that would interest overgods were the pills. Although the other pills on him were valuable, they were nothing to overgods. Jian Chen had paid quite the price for Fairy Hao Yu to be able to condense her body. So what if you've lost a few soul recovery pills? Once Fairy Hao Yu gets through successfully and obtains God King Duanmu's space ring, I'll be paid back by countless folds. My chaotic body might be able to break through successfully as well, thought Jian Chen as he comforted himself. The overgods who chased the golden flying sword could return at any time, so Jian Chen did not dare to waste any time. Immediately, he let out the bright moon divine hall from his space ring. As the doors swung open, Fairy Hao Yu slowly emerged in the form of a soul. Shen Jian also came out. The other overgods nearby naturally noticed Jian Chen's actions. None of them behaved carelessly. Jian Chen immediately put away the bright moon divine hall as well. However, the moment he put it away, Fairy Hao Yu suddenly became a blur that directly charged for the power of laws around God King Duanmu. A mere soul desires God King Duanmu's possession. What a joke! Aside from Guhan Shui, Feng Buell, and Bing Lu, all the other overgods sneered scornfully. However, what happened next made their mouths drop. When Fairy Hao Yu approached the screen of power, she was not directly destroyed as they had expected. Her illusionary body began to shine extraordinarily bright at that moment. The light seemed to be a layer of white flames that burned away at her soul, causing her soul to dull at a visible rate. On the other hand, her soul slowly fused into the power of laws under the burning light. All the power that came in contact with her body shuddered gently before slowly moving away as if it was afraid of coming in contact with her. The shudder was only what people on the outside saw. In reality, the layer of power trembled in fear. At that moment, none of the overgods had sensed that an unimaginably terrifying pressure had appeared from Fairy Hao Yu. It was just that Fairy Hao Yu had used the pressure with great skill, so it all surged towards the power of laws. The pressure seemed to be the might of the heavens. It had completely surpassed the power of laws, causing the power there to shy away. Of course, Fairy Hao Yu had also paid an unimaginable price to use this terrifying pressure. Her soul was being burned away, becoming weaker and weaker. Chapter 1755. An intense battle. Not only did the overgods present all become stunned as they watched Fairy Hao Yu slowly merge into the power of laws, but even the eyes of Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell narrowed. Disbelief filled their faces. The layer of power that protected God King Duanmu's remains were the laws of someone who had a foot planted in the primordial realm. Even though it could not attack actively and could only protect the remains, this did not mean it was easy to approach the power. Even most god kings would become injured if they approached the power of laws, let alone overgods. This was because the power had almost surpassed the level of God King. However, now that Fairy Hao Yu had approached it just as a soul, not only did she avoid dispersing, but she even merged into it slowly. It seemed like she was going to pass through the layer of power. Naturally, this sight shocked all the overgods present. Jian Chen, who is she? Guhan Shui's voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. Her voice was filled with shock. Who she is not important, but I can tell you that she's a supreme expert, Jian Chen replied to Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, and Feng Buell. The expressions of the 3 all changed when they heard that. At the same time, a pill appeared in Shen Jian's hand. This pill was something he obtained from the dwelling of God King Duanmu's disciple. It was known as a fire cloud pill. It could temporarily raise the consumer's cultivation by a minor level, ignoring the laws of the world. However, the price of consuming it was extremely great. No one would be willing to ingest the pill unless it was a life or death situation. Shen Jian consumed the fire cloud pill without any hesitation. A powerful presence immediately began to radiate from Shen Jian as soon as the pill reached Shen Jian's stomach, and his cultivation rapidly soared at that moment as well. It went from early god to mid-god. A fire cloud pill appeared in Jian Chen's hand as well. He thought, I hope the fire cloud pill is effective on chaotic force as well. Jian Chen consumed the fire cloud pill without any hesitation as well. At that moment, he felt like his chaotic force go on a rampage. Although his chaotic force had not reached the level of the 10th layer, Jian Chen could clearly sense that it flowed even more violently than before. It felt like it had gone berserk, and it was clearly more powerful than before. Fire cloud pills were good things, but the price to consume them was just too heavy, so he did not give the pill to Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, or Feng Buell. Even if he did give it to them, they would not consume it at a time like this. Oh no, the soul is trying to steal God King Duanmu's things. Stop her. We can't let her succeed. Just as Shen Jian and Jian Chen consumed the fire cloud pill, the overgods all responded. Hostility poured from their eyes as they charged towards Fairy Hao Yu without any hesitation. Two people swung their hands and sent a beam of powerful origin energy towards Fairy Hao Yu. Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, Feng Buell, move quickly. You'll be assisting a peak expert. Once the peak expert rebuilds her body, you'll definitely benefit as well, Jian Chen said to Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, and Feng Buell hurriedly before arriving before Fairy Hao Yu in a flash. He used his body as a shield to protect Fairy Hao Yu. At the same time, the flying snow sword appeared in his hand. He radiated with surging sword intent as he used his complete comprehension of the laws of the sword. He sent out two powerful strands of sword chi to disperse the incoming origin energy. Boom! The sword chi and origin energy collided and erupted with a powerful shockwave of energy. Jian Chen's feet seemed to be rooted to the ground as he stood there like a mountain. His body had become a tough shield. The energy all struck Jian Chen's body. It had completely failed to reach the Fairy Hao Yu behind him. At the same time, Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, and Feng Buell moved as well. They charged towards the overgods with gritted teeth and kept three of them busy. Aside from Jian Chen, there were a total of 14 overgods gathered there. Feng Buell, Bing Lu, and Guhan Shui kept 3 overgods busy in total, so there were 8 remaining. The 8 overgods all charged towards Jian Chen at that moment. All of them surged with aggression and hostility. Even though they feared Jian Chen slightly, they had completely forgotten about it with God King Duanmu's legacy presented before them. A will that splits the heavens. The sword shakes and stars shatter. Shen Jian roared out and his cloud stream sword emitted a pulse that quickly expanded towards 2 of the overgods. Shen Jian's laws of the sword had reached the great perfection of sword origin, equivalent to peak god. His cultivation had increased from the fire cloud pill as well, going from early god to mid-god. Moreover, the laws of the sword were one of the laws with the greatest offensive power, so his sword technique was enough to kill regular late gods. Even if it were not enough to threaten early overgods, they needed to face it seriously. Aside from Ling Hogong, the other overgods all comprehended laws that were weaker than the laws of the sword in terms of power. Ling Hogong possessed the power to challenge those stronger than him with his laws of the sword. He was able to reach a stalemate against a mid-overgod as an early overgod, so there was no need to mention the current Shen Jian. The faces of the 2 early overgod turned cold when they saw Shen Jian's attack. The pulse did not pose any threat to them, and it only forced them to face it seriously. Humph, a mere god dares to challenge overgods? Your bravery is praiseworthy, but you're just looking to die, the 2 early overgods sneered. One of them directly launched a palm strike and origin energy and the power of laws surged forth, dismantling Shen Jian's ripple. Soon afterwards, the 2 overgods changed in direction. They no longer charged towards Jian Chen. Their gazes were cold as they charged towards Shen Jian with killing intent. Shen Jian became extremely grim. Without a doubt, it was a huge challenge for him to fight 2 overgods with his current strength. Fortunately, he only needed to last half a minute. A will that splits the heavens. The sword extends and galaxies extinguish. Suddenly, Shen Jian roared out and specks of light suddenly began to glimmer around him. It transformed into an illusionary galaxy, radiating with grandeur. His entire body seemed to have fused with the galaxy, becoming the god in the illusionary starry sky. As he stabbed out with his cloud stream sword, the enormous force of the galaxy immediately surged out towards the 2 overgods with a tremendous and ancient presence. The 2 early overgods became rather stern as they faced this force. At that moment, the 2 of them could actually sense a sliver of threat from it, which shocked them very much. They were only facing a god after all. On the other side, Jian Chen stood with the flying snow sword while a damaged piece of armor had already appeared on him. He had obtained this armor from the sea realm. In reality, it was a god artifact of rather high quality, except it was just too damaged, so it was almost completely worthless. However, Jian Chen could no longer care about whether the armor would be useful or not now that he had to keep 6 early overgods busy for half a minute. He had equipped it. Chapter 1756. Brutality. Jian Chen, don't you dare try to take God King Duanmu's legacy for yourself. Jian Chen, move or today will be your last day alive. The 6 early overgods who charged towards Jian Chen yelled out aggressively. Before they even arrived, they had sent streams of energy towards Jian Chen. Jian Chen had equipped the damaged armor, which protected less than a third of his body. His white robes and hair ruffled despite the absence of wind. At the same time, a shocking sword intent radiated from his body. The sword intent was so powerful that the 6 incoming overgods all became stern. Sky-severing strike. Jian Chen bellowed out. He lifted the flying snow sword above his head, and a stream of light that was 300 meters in length immediately condensed. With a sky full of snow, the huge sword Qi directly cleaved down. As it fell, the surrounding space seemed to freeze, forming a sword domain. It enveloped the attacks from the 6 overgods. Boom! The collision between the sword Qi and the attacks resulted in a huge boom. They dispersed at the same time, causing terrifying energy and fragments of sword Qi to splay into the surroundings. Jian Chen's body trembled, and he seemed to pale slightly. His inner organs surged like the ocean. However, he remained still, forming a tough shield as he stood there firmly. He blocked the incoming energy to protect Fairy Hao Yu. At the same time, 2 strands of profound sword Qi appeared above his head. It shone with dazzling light and surged with sword Qi, giving off a terrifying pressure. The expressions of the 6 overgods around Jian Chen immediately changed as soon as the profound sword Qi had appeared. A smear of dread and deep fear appeared in their eyes. They had personally witnessed the might of the profound sword Qi. It could easily claim the lives of early overgods. Back off if you don't want to die, or I'll have to kill you mercilessly, Jian Chen called out. His presence surged as he held off multiple enemies by himself. 6 seconds had passed by now. The 6 overgods looked at each other as they became hesitant. What are we afraid of? We're 6 people. Even if his secret technique is powerful, I refuse to believe that we can't stop it when the 6 of us work together. Let's get him. Finally, the 6 overgods stopped hesitating after one of them called out. They encircled Jian Chen and shot towards him rapidly. A cold light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes. With a thought, one strand of profound sword Qi above his head immediately shot out as a streak of white light towards one of the overgods. The moment the profound sword Qi shot out, the 6 overgods stopped. They all struck out to stop the profound sword Qi. Origin energy pulsed around them wildly as their power of laws condensed into sharp swords that shot towards the profound sword Qi. Palm of Destruction. Death soul-severing slash. The 5 overgods all used truth tier battle skills. Terrifying pressure permeated the surroundings as 5 extremely terrifying powers tore through the surroundings and rolled towards Jian Chen devastatingly. Jian Chen had never felt so grim before. With a thought, he sent out the second strand of profound sword Qi to fend off the 5 battle skills. The profound sword Qi turned into a streak of light and collided with the first sword Qi in a single moment. With a boom, the first battle skill collapsed without being able to put up any resistance at all. The profound sword Qi continued towards the second, third, fourth, and fifth battle skills. Boom, 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 boom. Along with a string of rumbles, the profound sword Qi destroyed the battle skills from the 5 overgods. The profound sword Qi did not disperse yet either. It flickered as it directly shot towards one of the overgods like a brave warrior. The overgod became extremely stern. He immediately bellowed out as energy surged from his body. He swung his sickle towards the profound sword Qi with his power of laws. He had put his life on the line with that attack. Chapter 1757. Half a minute after tearing through the 5 battle skills from the overgods, the profound sword Qi had weakened greatly. It was nowhere near as powerful as it was at the beginning. In the end, it shattered under the slash from the sickle. However, due to the momentum of the attack, The scattered sword chi continued in the same direction towards the early overgod that wielded a sickle. Caught off guard, the early overgod was struck by the shattered sword chi. Every single strand of the residual sword chi pierced his body easily, creating many holes. The power from the laws of the sword constantly gnawed away at him around his wounds, causing his condition to worsen. The overgod grunted and left the battle with his sickle. He was heavily injured and incapacitated. Jian Chen's power of the soul was completely drained after sending out the 2 strands of sword chi. He felt waves of dizziness descend upon him. However, as the soul recovery pill came into play, the power of his soul immediately began to replenish rapidly. 21 seconds had passed by now. Kill him. The 4 other overgods all went crazy. They basically charged towards Jian Chen with bloodshot eyes, as they could already see that most of Fairy Hao Yu had already merged into the power of laws that protected God King Duanmu's remains. The dizziness in Jian Chen's head receded swiftly, and he felt his head clear up again. Even though the power of his soul had replenished, he was clearly unable to use a 3rd strand of profound sword chi with just the few seconds that had passed. Daluo sword! Jian Chen bellowed out. He formed a seal with one hand, and the flying snow sword immediately shone with a golden light. A golden sword chi condensed around the flying snow sword. As he swung the sword, the golden sword chi shot out with a swish, colliding with the sword in one of the overgod's hands. As the Daluo sword chi dispersed, the early overgod who had received the attack came to a halt as well. He staggered a few steps backwards helplessly. However, the 3 other overgods had all arrived before Jian Chen now. One of them used a huge hammer to strike towards Jian Chen's chest, while the other 2 both used swords. They stabbed out simultaneously with the laws of fire and the laws of darkness. The stab with the laws of fire extended towards Jian Chen while the attack with the laws of darkness went around Jian Chen and headed directly towards the Fairy Hao Yu behind him. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed when he saw the attack that headed towards Fairy Hao Yu. Then he roared out, and his eyes shone shockingly. Red light vaguely appeared in his pupils. This was the sign of him about to lose his mind. His main mission was to protect Fairy Hao Yu for half a minute. No matter how dangerous it was, he could not dodge during this period of time, nor could he retreat. He had to face the attacks head-on. The sword was already stabbed towards Fairy Hao Yu, so she was in danger now. Jian Chen extended his left hand in that crucial moment. Chaotic force and silver-white light enveloped his hand. He directly grabbed the sword with his hand. At the same time, he placed the flying snow sword across his body to block the hammer that traveled towards his chest. Spurt! The sword with the laws of fire had already stabbed into Jian Chen, piercing him all the way through. The tip of the sword dripped with the blood of his chaotic body. Each droplet of blood possessed a lot of power. It could even kill weaker receival experts. The hand that Jian Chen had used to grab the sword became bloodied as well. His flesh and skin had been destroyed, revealing white bone. Fortunately, Jian Chen had managed to grab the sword tightly, preventing it from reaching Fairy Hao Yu. His body stood before Fairy Hao Yu like a tough shield, blocking all the shockwaves of energy. 24 seconds had passed now. At this moment, the 3 overgods had already approached Jian Chen. None of them were weaker than Jian Chen, yet he now had to face the 3 of them at the same time. He was struggling to stop them, yet he also had to protect Fairy Hao Yu. The red light in Jian Chen's eyes became more and more intense while the world in Jian Chen's eyes gradually reddened. Jian Chen knew that he was losing his mind, but he could do nothing about it right now. Seeing how Fairy Hao Yu had almost merged into the power of laws, determination suddenly flooded his eyes, and he called out, "Explode flying snow sword." With a deafening boom, the flying snow sword exploded with dazzling white light. The explosion contained the laws of the sword and strands of chaotic force. Immediately, a terrifying energy expanded with the laws of the sword and chaotic force, and it pushed back the 3 early overgods. Jian Chen removed the spear he had obtained from killing the skinny overgod earlier at this moment. He held it in one hand and drove the tip deeply into the ground, using it to stabilize himself. As Jian Chen clung onto the spear, he remained on the spot as he endured the storm-like barrage from the explosion of the flying snow sword. He did not take a single step back, but he paid a great price as a result. His wounds became even worse and blood spurted from his mouth time and time again. He had become sheet white now. 27 seconds had passed now. The 3 early overgods stabilized themselves very soon. Before the shockwaves of energy had dispersed, They charged through the energy and headed towards Jian Chen again. Jian Chen glared at the three. At this moment, he could feel his consciousness fade slightly while the world before him had gradually become filled with red. In the last 3 seconds, the bloody Jian Chen suddenly charged towards the 3 early overgods. He stretched out his hands and grabbed the swords from the 2 overgods and used the damaged armor to forcefully endure the attack from the hammer. Boom! The hammer blew Jian Chen far away. As he flew backwards, he vomited multiple times. His wounds were horrendous. Quick, kill the soul! After blowing Jian Chen away, the 3 overgods immediately charged towards Fairy Hao Yu. Their gazes were icy. However, it was also at this time that Fairy Hao Yu's illusionary soul merged into the power of laws completely. She vanished from the overgod's vision. Only a cold voice that was filled with killing intent rang out. If you dare kill the 2 of them, I'll wipe out your entire clan once I recover my strength. Even if you flee to the ends of the earth, I'll take your lives. Even the God King of your divine kingdom won't be able to protect you. The expressions of the 3 early overgods changed when they heard that. Even God Kings would not be able to protect them. Was the soul a supreme God King in the past? Or even beyond God King? Shen Jian collapsed on the ground on the other side, bloodied and wounded. Although the 2 overgods he fought did not suffer any significant wounds, they seemed to be in a rather horrible condition. Shen Jian's sword qi had ripped their clothes. Chapter 1758. Pushed to the end, the 2 early overgods Shen Jian had stopped were both cold. They swore, "God damn it. We're 2 mighty overgods, yet a mere god kept us busy for so long, allowing that soul to approach God King Duanmu's remains. Just a mere god has actually made us lose God King Duanmu's legacy. This is unforgivable." One of the overgods in tattered clothes said coldly, "The crimes of this god is so great that even killing him won't be enough. We have to let him understand that death will only be a relief." The 2 overgods were sunken-faced. Killing intent flooded their eyes. They were 2 early overgods. They possessed an advantage in cultivation, comprehension, and numbers, yet it was so arduous for them to kill a single god. They were even reduced to such a horrible condition and were completely embarrassed. Their desire to kill Shen Jian was extremely intense. They directly ignored Fairy Hao Yu's threats. The threat from a fragile soul was great enough to stun them for a moment, but they did not believe that Fairy Hao Yu would actually possess such strength. At this moment, the bloody Jian Chen climbed up from the ground. He clung onto his last shred of consciousness and arrived before Shen Jian as quickly as possible. He directly grabbed Shen Jian, who was so heavily injured that he could not even stand. At the same time, he formed a seal with his hand. Linear lightning release. Jian Chen became engulfed in light as he turned into a bolt of lightning, shooting towards the entrance with unbelievable speed. In just a single instance, he had arrived at the entrance and was about to escape. The eyes of all the early overgods narrowed in shock as they watched Jian Chen approach the entrance in a single instance. Without any exception, none of them were able to do anything about it. Even they could not stop Jian Chen with the speed he currently demonstrated. What shocking speed! Even the laws of wind pale in comparison. An overgod sighed in surprise. He had never seen someone move so quickly in his entire life. The figures of Jian Chen and Shen Jian had even begun to stretch as they flew. They were like streams of light. After reaching Sword Spirit, Jian Chen could naturally move much faster with a linear lightning release. However, a burly man appeared at the entrance at this moment. He was dejected, appearing there with regret and gloom. He had clearly just come in. The burly man was not weak. He was a mid-overgod. Evidently, he was one of the overgods who had left earlier in pursuit of the golden sword. As soon as the burly man entered the 3rd hut, Jian Chen just so happened to collide into him. Bang! A visible ripple appeared from their collision, expanding out into the surroundings. Jian Chen's body was knocked back, and the terrifying speed that linear lightning release brought suddenly vanished. Jian Chen felt like his entire body had become dislocated from the collision as his entire body wrenched in pain. His organs had completely turned to mush, and he vomited blood again and again. Caught off guard, the burly man staggered backwards from the collision. Each step left behind a deep imprint. In the end, he fell on his bottom. His face became completely flushed as his organs also churned from the collision. Which brat ran into me? The burly man leapt up and bellowed out. His face was pale with rage. He had just come in from outside and had not grasped the situation, yet someone had knocked him onto his bottom. He would naturally be enraged. What he did not know was that his sudden entry had cut off all of Jian Chen's hopes to escape, forcing him back into despair. Jian Chen had become even more wounded after their collision. Soon afterwards, other overgods entered one by one as well. They were all dejected and filled with regret. These people were the experts who took part in the fight for the flying sword. They had all returned now. Many of them were speckled with blood and sickly pale. They were injured. Jian Chen became gloomy when he saw this. He secretly sighed. He knew that he was probably done for. Just when he thought of that, his pupils became completely red. His last shred of consciousness had vanished, and he had lost his mind completely now. However, as he was simply too heavily injured, his head fell the moment he lost his mind, and he fell unconscious. Shen Jian had also fallen unconscious beside him. The force from striking the burly man with the linear lightning release had deepened his wounds as well. If it were not for the fact that both of them had reached godhood, just the force from the collision would have been enough to reduce them to mincemeat. The return of the other overgods made the expressions Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell change. The three of them did not hesitate. They immediately fled towards the entrance. Without a single doubt, Jian Chen had become everyone's enemies by assisting Fairy Hao Yu to pass through the power of laws and approach God King Duanmu's remains. They had become his accomplices, so remaining here would not help them at all. Don't let them escape. Stop them. An early overgod called out as soon as the three overgods fled. His eyes were filled with intense hatred. Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell fled extremely quickly, shooting towards the entrance with lightning speed. Along the way, Guhan Shui and Feng Buell tried to grab Jian Chen and Shen Jian so that they could take them away with them. However, the two overgods that Shen Jian fought before stopped Feng Buell and Guhan Shui. At the same time, the burly man who had been knocked onto his bottom looked over coldly. The man was a mid-overgod. Guhan Shui and Feng Buell's hearts immediately jumped when he looked over. They could not afford to bother with Jian Chen and Shen Jian anymore. They immediately charged off without any hesitation. The overgods who fought against Shen Jian and Jian Chen immediately pursued them. At the same time, they called out for the other overgods to stop the three. However, the overgods who had come in later had no idea what was going on. Coupled with the fact that the people yelling at them were only early overgods, they did not move. In the end, the three of them escaped successfully. God damn it, why did you let them escape? They're accomplices. They helped a soul pass through the power of laws. The soul has probably already laid her hands on God King Duanmu's items now. An early overgod who fought against Shen Jian said regretfully. What did you say? Someone passed through the layer of power and approached God King Duanmu's remains? The expressions of all the overgods who had just returned changed when they heard that. They all cried out as they glared at the person who had just spoken. Soon afterwards, the early overgods explained the recent events. Every single one of the overgods that had just returned paled after hearing the story as they glared at the unconscious Jian Chen and Shen Jian with killing intent. Chapter 1759. Rescue. Since that soul is with Jian Chen, we can't let Jian Chen go, a late overgod growled. Killing intent surged in his eyes, creating a chilling sight. Yeah, we can't let Jian Chen go. Jian Chen actually decided to work with his companion to steal God King Duanmu's possessions while we were away. We can't let him go so easily. The surrounding overgods all spoke righteously. Every single one of them was very indignant. It was fine that they had failed to obtain God King Duanmu's flying sword, but how could they accept that someone else had taken away all of God King Duanmu's other possessions as well? The late overgod, Yang Kai, stood in the group with the other overgods from the royal city of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. However, they all remained silent about what Jian Chen was going through. At this moment, a black-robed old man walked out from the group. He stared at Jian Chen coldly and said, I know a soul extraction technique, so I'll extract Jian Chen's soul and leave it for all of you to deal with. With that, he directly made his way towards Jian Chen. The black-robed man was the ancestor of the Mo family from the divine kingdom of Qingyang. He was a mid-overgod. No one stopped the ancestor of the Mo family. They just watched on. Jian Chen had stolen the fortune that belonged to them, so they were naturally filled with hatred towards him. They were tempted to kill Jian Chen then and there. The ancestor of the Mo family arrived before Jian Chen. He directly extended his hand towards Jian Chen and grabbed him. However, when his hand touched Jian Chen's damaged armor, his eyes narrowed by an undetectable amount. A god artifact. This armor is actually a god artifact. The ancestor of the Mo family was greatly shocked as his heart churned. God artifacts were treasures that surpassed saint artifacts. They were extremely precious and rare. Even a supreme god king like Duanmu could not possess one. Under ordinary circumstances, only chaotic primes could own a god artifact. There were extremely few infinite primes who did own one. Even most infinite primes in the saints' world used treasures that were either half-god artifacts or supreme-quality saint artifacts. Any single god artifact was an item that infinite primes dreamed of. There were just too many records that detailed god artifacts in the saints' world, so even though the ancestor of the Mo family had never seen a god artifact before, he knew a lot about them with his strength at mid-over god. As a result, he immediately recognized the grade of the armor when he touched it. However, the ancestor of the Mo family showed none of his current feelings on his face. He examined the damaged armor like it was nothing special and said indifferently, "I never thought that Jian Chen would actually have an 8th grade saint artifact on him. It's just a pity that it's too heavily damaged, but the materials that went into creating it are worth a little." As he said that, the ancestor of the Mo family took the armor off Jian Chen steadily and stowed it away in his space ring. However, he was nowhere near as calm as he appeared on the surface. Instead, he was extraordinarily excited. He just hid his excitement deeply. Although the god artifact was damaged, it was still a god artifact after all. It was worth nothing to primordial realm experts, but it was a supreme treasure to any over-god. I'm rich. I never thought I'd find a god artifact. This is a god artifact. A god artifact. The ancestor of the Mo clan was completely overjoyed, but he did not dare to show any of it at all. He extended his hands like nothing had happened and started to change between his seals. He had started to cast a secret technique to extract Jian Chen's soul. Ha 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 ha, Jian Chen has caught this young master's eye. None of you can harm him, or I'll have to be rude. At this moment, a voice rang out from behind everyone. A white-robed, handsome, and elegant young man walked into the stone hut. He smiled impudently as he held a fan. He made his way past all the overgods leisurely, directly making his way towards Jian Chen. A burly man followed behind the young man closely like a loyal guard. The appearance of the young man immediately made the expressions of all the overgods change. They had seen the young man and burly man from afar when they worked on smashing through the entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling from the outside. They knew that the young man had a large background, and he was probably from some powerful clan or organization. As a result, they had turned a blind eye to his actions, ignoring them. The ancestor of the Mo family stopped. He turned towards the young man and his face sank slightly. No, Jian Chen has taken away something that belongs to us. You're dreaming if you want us to hand him over. It's absolutely impossible unless Jian Chen gets his companion to hand over everything she has obtained. A late overgod stood forwards and said firmly. Even though the young man came from quite the background, the matter was connected to their interests. It had even related to whether they could become god kings or not. As a result, they stood forwards to object even though they feared the organization behind the young man slightly. Not to mention that there were several dozen overgods gathered here. They represented the surrounding divine kingdoms and every single one of them wanted God King Duanmu's possessions, so they would naturally stand together. Haha, it's not up to you to decide that. I want to take Jian Chen away right now. If there are any of you who object, you really should stop me, the young man giggled as he played around with his fan. He was cocky, completely looking down on the overgods. He directly arrived before Jian Chen and glanced at the unconscious Shen Jian. He took out a storage treasure that was like a divine hall and put Shen Jian away before lifting up Jian Chen with his arms. He made his way towards the entrance, completely ignoring the murderous gazes of the surrounding overgods. Stop, we won't let Jian Chen go. You won't be leaving here today. The late overgod who had spoken before stood in front of the young man and said with a sunken face. Yeah, we're not letting you take Jian Chen. You're not going to be leaving today. Hand over Jian Chen. Several other overgods stood forwards after the late overgod objected. They blocked the young man's path together as cold lights flickered in their eyes. How dare you? The burly man behind the young man bellowed out at this moment and directly waved his hand towards the overgods. Immediately, a terrifying gale came whistling directly towards the overgods. The gale did not give off any pressure or presence at all, but the overgods were completely unable to resist when it approached them. They were swept far away like leaves. Chapter 1760. Tong Tian. The overgods were unable to put up a fight at all before the gale. Even the late overgod was as insignificant as an ant before it. No matter how they struggled, no matter how they resisted, it was all futile. In the end, the gale directly pushed them out of the space, and the overgods disappeared before all their eyes. Immediately, silence descended. The eyes of all the other overgods widened as they stared at the man behind the young man with a fan in shock. Their hearts churned. Even the ancestor of the Mo family who had taken the damaged god artifact from Jian Chen became stunned. He was frightened, and he was secretly relieved that he was not the one who had stood forward to stop the young man. The overgods had been blown away from just a flick of the hand. There was even a late overgod among them. That was simply too terrifying. God King, he must be a God King. Only before God Kings are late overgods so puny. Even several overgods cannot resist a simple wave of his hand. Probably even the person ranked first on the overgod's plaque can't achieve that. He's a God King. He's a God King for sure. Heavens, he actually has the protection of a God King. Just how terrifying is that young man's background? Everyone's gazes towards the young man, and the burly man underwent an overwhelming change. Before, they only feared the young man slightly, but now they felt dread. It was a sense of dread that they had never experienced before. The young man kept walking, directly making his way out with the injured Jian Chen. He did not become surprised or startled by how Uncle Qin had blown away several overgods with a flick of his hand, as if he had been expecting that. I'm going to be leaving, everyone. If you still want Jian Chen, you must come quickly, seniors. The young man smiled cheekily as he glanced past everyone's faces slowly. None of the overgods dared to utter a single word. Instead, they quickly formed a path as the young man advanced, unwilling to stop him at all. They did not dare to show any displeasure on their faces, as well as they were afraid of making the young man unhappy. Naturally, the young man left easily with Jian Chen. Even though the overgods objected to this, they could do nothing about it. The soul still hasn't come out. Everyone guard here. Once the soul comes out, immediately destroy her. She won't be able to take away anything like that anyway, an early overgod said suddenly after the young man's departure. The eyes of the overgods in the surroundings immediately lit up. They watched over the place as they attacked the power of laws together to waste it away faster. However, not everyone stayed. A few of the injured overgods knew that they probably would not benefit if they stayed, so they left without a second thought. The ancestor of the Mo family did not remain either. He left the dwelling. He had already obtained a damaged god artifact and was satisfied with what he had gained. He no longer wanted to take part in the upcoming fight. At this moment, Fairy Hao Yu's illusionary body hovered above God King Duanmu's remains within the region protected by the power of laws. There was an incomplete golden core of laws in God King Duanmu's head. Strands of energy radiated from it, pouring endlessly towards Fairy Hao Yu's soul like small streams, allowing her soul to grow at a terrifying pace. There was still some of the God King's former power left in his remains that had not completely dispersed after so many years. Fairy Hao Yu was devouring it rapidly. A space ring hovered in the air as well. The space ring was the one on God King Duanmu's finger. At this moment, meter cubes of divine crystals hovered out as the energy within turned into a rapid stream that was all absorbed by Fairy Hao Yu. The divine crystals were all pure and without any contaminants. To no surprise, they were all of the supreme grade, making them even more valuable than high-grade divine crystals. Fairy Hao Yu was using the remaining possessions of God King Duanmu to recover her strength and body. Jian Chen gradually regained consciousness after some time. When he opened his eyes, all he saw was a deep, blue sky and white clouds. You actually woke up so soon. I thought it'll take you a day or two at the very least, but I never thought you'd wake up in just 4 hours. A surprised voice rang out from beside him as Jian Chen was still in a daze. He heard it clearly. Jian Chen looked over and found a young man in white robes sitting nearby with one leg atop the other. He smiled impudently as he stared at Jian Chen with interest. Near the young man stood a burly man with his back towards Jian Chen. He was seated on the floor. Jian Chen quickly observed his surroundings and found that he was among a mountain range. The fierce gale in the surroundings buffeted his hair and clothes. "What is this place? And who are you?" Jian Chen asked as he tried to move. He tried to stand up, but tremendous pain filled his body, causing him to furrow his brows. He was grievously injured. He had not recovered, so any movement would affect his wounds. The young man sank into his thoughts. He looked around and said with uncertainty, "This is the divine kingdom of 9 stars, I think. I can't really remember. As for who I am..." The young man suddenly smiled resplendently. He slowly stood up and arrived before Jian Chen while fluttering his fan. He sat down beside Jian Chen and smiled. "I am your savior. If I had not stepped in and saved your life, your soul would have been extracted by that Sai, I forgot his name, but that overgod from some Mo family in the divine kingdom of Qingyang. You definitely would have suffered a fate worse than death. Thank you for saving my life, sir. I will never forget your kindness," Jian Chen said to the young man. However, he firmly remembered the Mo family of the divine kingdom of Qingyang. Jian Chen really could not accept it if he had really tried to extract his soul and make him suffer a fate even worse than death. "My name is not Sir. Jian Chen, listen up. My name is Tong Tian. The character Tong from Tong Tian, and the character Tian from Tong Tian. What do you think about it? Isn't it awesome?" The young man said proudly with his chest held high. He was pleased with himself. "It really is awesome. Thank you for saving me, young Master Tong Tian," said Jian Chen. From their short conversation, he could tell that Tong Tian was probably from a large clan. He possessed a natural sense of pride and cockiness, but he did not seem to possess a bad character. Tong Tian chuckled and said, "Jian Chen, you're extremely heavily injured, so you probably won't be able to recover in a short amount of time. I like you, so I'll help you out." As he said that, a black pill silently appeared in his hand. He glanced at the Uncle Qin behind him in guilt before quickly feeding Jian Chen the pill. Uncle Qin's face twitched unnaturally. He turned towards Tong Tian and said with a darkened face, "Young master, how did you steal Elder Gu's 9 refined life-giving pill?" Chapter 1761. The Empyrean Demon Cult, 1. Although Uncle Qin had his back towards them as he rested, his cultivation was remarkable. Even with his eyes closed, Tong Tian was unable to hide his actions from the former. Tong Tian was surprised inside, and he became even more guilt-ridden. However, he showed none of it on his face and remained composed. He fluttered his fan. "Uncle Qin, you're mistaken. It's not like Elder Gu is the only one who can refine the 9 refined life-giving pill. There are plenty of Grandmaster alchemists in the Saints' world who can refine them. It's not like it's impossible for me to get some of them with my identity. And it's not like you don't know about the power of the formations around Elder Gu's pill room. How is it possible for me to get in there with my strength?" Uncle Qin shook his head helplessly as he listened to Tong Tian's serious analysis. Tong Tian's words were completely true, but Uncle Qin understood that the young master before him probably really did use some method he did not know to infiltrate Elder Gu's pill room and steal quite a lot of pills. Jian Chen's expression became rather strange as he listened to the two of them talk. He had realized that the pill that Tong Tian had fed him was probably stolen from his own clan. However, Jian Chen's face changed slightly at this moment. In the next moment, a gentle light began to radiate from him. It enveloped him completely in a single instance. He seemed to have become a huge cocoon as a sweet, medicinal fragrance appeared. Just a single breath of it filled him with an extremely great feeling as if the fragrance had cleansed all the impurities within his body. Jian Chen's wounds actually healed at an unbelievable rate within the white light. He healed so quickly that even Jian Chen's expression changed, becoming greatly shocked. In under a minute, the white light around Jian Chen receded and revealed him. However, his complexion had returned to its previous state and he had made a complete recovery as well. What a powerful pill. It's countless times more powerful than any healing pills I've ever seen. Jian Chen could not help but sigh in amazement. He understood just how severe his wounds were. Even if he used the chaotic body and radiant saint force, he would need a day at the very least to recover completely, and that was already an astonishing speed. However, the 9 refined life-giving pill had used less than a minute to heal him completely. Jian Chen rarely consumed pills when he was injured in the past, as the effects of pills would basically be negligible. They would be nowhere near as quick as his chaotic body. However, the 9 refined life-giving pill was more than 100 times more powerful than his chaotic body. Tong Tian said rather proudly when he heard Jian Chen's praise. Of course. Why don't you have a look at what the pill is? It's a 9 refined life-giving pill. I expended a tremendous amount of effort to get my hands on them, and even with that, I only managed to get 3. If it were not for the fact that I took a liking to you when I first saw you, I would have never given you it. Jian Chen stood up and thanked Tong Tian again. Then he said, Young Master Tong Tian, my friend is still in God King Duanmu's dwelling. She is in constant danger, so I must hurry back immediately. Please forgive my rudeness. Jian Chen, there are several dozen overgods in the dwelling. Are you sure that you can save your friend? Tong Tian said steadily. Jian Chen became rather stern. If I have enough time, I do have some confidence in achieving that. Jian Chen thought of the small high-grade divine crystal mine in the Dong'an province. With his current strength, he could hold his ground against all the powerful clans in the Dong'an province. It would be extremely easy for him to take over the mine. As long as he used the mine to reach the 10th layer of the chaotic body, his battle prowess would definitely skyrocket. He was confident that he could deal with mid-overgods with the power of his chaotic body. Even if he could not defeat late overgods, he could hold his ground against them. Qin Zhen walked over and looked at Jian Chen in admiration. He said, You should be talking about that soul, right? You don't have to worry about that. Your friend is far more complicated than she seems. She's a peak expert that has already reached infinite prime. She's currently using Duanmu's possessions to recover, so those overgods won't be able to threaten her. Jian Chen finally let out a breath of relief when he heard that. However, he was shocked when he learned about Fairy Hao Yu's strength. She was actually an infinite prime. However, Jian Chen seemed to notice something soon afterwards. He stared at Qin Zheng in shock. Qin Zheng could actually tell Fairy Hao Yu's past strength? And he knew that she was using God King Duanmu's possessions to recover? Could he see through the layer of power that protected God King Duanmu's remains? Jian Chen, since your friend is safe, there's no need for you to leave in such a hurry. Come drink with me, laughed Tong Tian. With a wave of his hand, a table full of delicacies appeared again, and he said proudly, I carry many delicacies with me at all times. It's enough for us to feast on for a few hundred years. These are all precious in the world. Jian Chen, sit, let's talk and eat. Jian Chen hesitated slightly when he saw the table full of dishes. He did not want to decline, so he just sat down and began talking with Tong Tian. Brother Jian Chen, that armor you wore seems to have been taken away by the overgod from that Mo clan or something. Don't you plan on retrieving it? Tong Tian asked. He sat with one leg crossed over the other like a fool. A cold light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes, and he said, My armor is not so easy to take away. I will personally pay a visit to the Mo family of the divine kingdom of Qingyang before long. The Mo family is nothing good. I find them displeasing to the eye as well. When you visit the Mo family, please don't forget to call me. I'll cover you, Tong Tian said confidently. Even though he was only a mid-god, he completely looked down on the Mo family. Thank you, brother Tong Tian, but I should be enough to deal with the Mo family. Jian Chen clasped his hands in response. Then he thought of something and asked, Brother Tong Tian, may I ask who obtained God King Duanmu's flying sword in the end? Jian Chen stared at Tong Tian in much interest. Now that he had lost the flying snow sword, he was in search of a sword of higher quality. That golden flying sword seems to have been taken away by an old man who also comprehended the laws of the sword. Though I have to say, that old man really is brave. He's actually willing to become enemies with the Empyrean demon cult. There are not many organizations who are willing to provoke them even with the entire cloud plane in perspective. That old man really is wet behind the ears. He has no idea about the power that the Empyrean demon cult possesses. Tong Tian became rather stern when he mentioned the Empyrean demon cult. The Empyrean demon cult? Jian Chen was slightly surprised. This was the second time he had heard about the Empyrean demon cult, so he could not help but become curiously. He asked, Brother Tong Tian, can you tell me about the Empyrean demon cult? The Great Elder is the person who's actually in control of the Empyrean demon cult as well, Qing Zhang said rather grimly. He became extremely stern when he mentioned the Great Elder as deep fear filled his eyes. A Great Elder? Jian Chen murmured. Without even thinking anymore, he understood that the Great Elder was a peak expert. Although the branch on the cloud plane has 3 infinite primes and is quite strong, they've never garnered the attention of the few powerful organizations on the cloud plane. What the organizations really fear is the mysterious Great Elder behind the Empyrean demon cult. It is exactly because of his existence that the powerful organizations fear the Empyrean demon cult slightly, and are unwilling to provoke them over trivial matters. Uncle Qin, is the Great Elder really that powerful? To the point where he supports the entire organization by himself, making so many powerful organizations fear him. This time, even Tong Tian was shocked. He clearly did not know about this. Qin Zhang nodded. The Great Elder is indeed extremely powerful. The reason why the Empyrean demon cult is ranked as one of the most powerful organizations on the cloud plane is all because of the Great Elder. It's just that the Great Elder is extremely mysterious. Very few people have seen him personally. It's said that ever since the cult was founded, the Great Elder has only stepped in a total of 3 times. The first time was at the U-plane. The Empyrean demon cult had offended a powerful organization on the U-plane back then, and the organization had launched devastating attacks towards them, drawing in the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult. The Great Elder directly killed his way into the organization's sect. In the end, neither of their 2 chaotic primes managed to escape. They were killed off completely. From then on, the organization vanished from the U-plane. The second time was on planet Tianming of the 81 greater planets. The Planet Lord had destroyed the branch of the Empyrean demon cult on the planet, so the Great Elder and the Planet Lord engaged in a great fight in outer space. In the end, the Great Elder killed the Planet Lord. Even Qin Zhang was no longer able to remain composed when he reached there. His expression changed, and he sighed gently. The Planet Lord was a Grand Prime, yet he actually died at the hands of the Great Elder. The expressions of both Jian Chen and Tong Tian changed when they heard that. The Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult was just too terrifying. Even Grand Primes had died at his hands. Grand Primes were experts who had arrived at the apex of the Saints' world, approaching the end of cultivation. They were equivalent to immortal exalts in the immortals' world. The Anata Grand Prime, Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, and the Old Master of the Sword Spirits had reached that level. What about the third time? Tong Tian asked eagerly. Qin Zheng's emotions became mixed. He said, the third time happened 100,000 years ago. The Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult began fighting a Hall Elder of the God clan from the God Swirl plane. The Hall Elder was also a Grand Prime. He was an early Grand Prime, but he comprehended the laws of destruction. He was so powerful that even the Planet Lord of planet Tianming was not his opponent. Qin Zhen did not continue after reaching there. What was the outcome? Did the Hall Elder of the God clan win? Or was it the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult? Jian Chen asked. He cared for the answer to this very much, as the God clan on the God Swirl plane was Tai Ta's clan. There was no outcome to this battle. It ended as an unsettled matter, replied Qin Zheng. Jian Chen and Tong Tian looked at each other. It had ended as an unsettled matter. Did that not mean that the Hall Elder was unable to deal with the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult? It is exactly because the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult has fought 3 times that the status of the Empyrean demon cult has been consolidated in the Saints' world, so even on the cloud plane, there are no large organizations who would want to provoke them easily. Even if the Empyrean demon cult goes a little overboard on the cloud plane, the powerful organizations will just turn a blind eye to them as long as they don't get in their way. Chapter 1763. Invitation. Jian Chen fell silent. When he first heard about the Empyrean demon cult in the dwelling, he had already realized that they were an extremely powerful organization. However, he had never imagined them to actually be so powerful. In particular, the mysterious Great Elder who founded the cult single-handedly was so powerful that Jian Chen felt extremely shocked. He had even claimed the life of a Grand Prime. Jian Chen could only look up to such a powerful existence right now. Jian Chen began to worry for Ling Hogong even more. For God King Duanmu's flying sword, Ling Hogong had offended such a powerful organization. The Empyrean demon cult was so powerful that even if Ling Hogong became as powerful as God King Duanmu when he was still alive, he would not be able to fend them off at all. Although they were nothing like close friends, Ling Hogong's infatuation with the sword and moral character had garnered Jian Chen's admiration. He naturally did not want Ling Hogong to be murdered by the Empyrean demon cult. Qin Zhang stared at Jian Chen and seemed to be able to tell what Jian Chen was worrying about with a single glance. He said, "You don't have to worry too much. Ling Hogong has only offended one of the 3 vice leaders, Huaiyan. While there are 3 vice leaders in the branch on the Cloud Province, Huaiyan alone does not represent the entire Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain. There's even less reason for you to worry about the mysterious Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult. You'll only force him out if you destroy the entire Empyrean demon cult branch on the Cloud Plain. As a Great Elder, he naturally will not interfere with personal matters. Even without the terrifyingly powerful Great Elder, just the vice leader Huaiyan is an undefeatable existence to Ling Hogong." Jian Chen sighed gently. He could only pray for Ling Hogong right now. There was nothing else he could do. Tong Tian swiveled his eyes when he heard that. He said to Jian Chen, if you really want to protect that old man who obtained God King Duanmu's sword, I do have an idea." "What's the idea?" Even though Jian Chen knew that Tong Tian would be up to no good from his smile, he still could not help but ask. Tong Tian sniggered and said, "It's very simple, and that's for you to join our Tong family. With your talent, the clan will definitely nurture you with everything they have once you join. You'll also obtain an extremely great status in the clan. As long as you join our Tong family, protecting your friend is a piece of cake." Qin Zhang also looked towards Jian Chen as he waited for the latter's reply. There was a sliver of eagerness in his nonchalant gaze. He felt extremely shocked by Jian Chen's talent, and he had completely witnessed Jian Chen's moral character. He was extremely content with him, so he naturally hoped that Jian Chen could join their Tong family very much. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. He did not answer the question and instead asked, "Isn't your Tong family afraid of the Empyrean demon cult?" "Naturally, our Tong family fears the Empyrean demon cult slightly, but what we fear are not the vice leaders but the great elder behind the entire cult." This time, the speaker was Qin Zhang, who stood to one side with his arms crossed. Qin Zhang looked at Jian Chen with shining eyes. He swore solemnly, "Jian Chen, if you join our clan, we will support you with everything we have. We'll give you various precious pills, cultivation methods, battle skills, and even precious heavenly resources. We will assist you with your growth. Even your friend who has offended the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult can be protected by our clan." Jian Chen sank into his thoughts. Without a single doubt, Tong Tian's Tong family was one of the most powerful clans in the entire Cloud Plain. They did not even worry about the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult who was an infinite prime. If he really did receive the full support of such a clan, breaking through with the chaotic body would become an extremely easy matter. This was because even in the Immortals world, all the ordinary chaotic bodies that reached major achievement had the support of large sects and clans, without a single exception. Very few people were able to progress the chaotic body to a powerful level alone. However, if he joined the Tong family, he would come across primordial realm experts. If he exposed the secret of the twin swords before them, it would be a devastating disaster. No one would be able to protect him. Jian Chen made up his mind very quickly after a moment of thought. He said to Qin Zhang and Tong Tian apologetically, "Thank you for your kind intentions, but I am used to moving freely and not being tied down. As a result, I don't plan on joining any organization for now. Moreover, the Saints' world is so large. I want to go see other places, so I won't be staying on the Cloud Plain for too long." Jian Chen's declination disappointed Qin Zhang and Tong Tian, but they recovered very soon. Tong Tian chuckled aloud and said without minding it, "It's no problem at all. Since Brother Jian Chen likes to move freely, I naturally won't trouble Brother Jian Chen. Brother Jian Chen, let's drink some more. It doesn't matter if you want to join our Tong family or not. I'm making you my friend." Tong Tian raised his cup and said generously. Jian Chen also raised his cup. He said, "If I become accomplished in cultivation in the future, feel free to ask me if there is anywhere I can be of use so that I can return the kindness you've shown today." As he said that, Jian Chen and Tong Tian clinked glasses and downed all the contents. Tong Tian tossed a token to Jian Chen and said, "That's a token for identification from me. Brother Jian Chen, if you ever come across any problems you can't handle, just bring the token to the Tong family and come to look for me." As long as you don't provoke any primordial realm experts, I can settle any problems for you. At the same time, Tong Tian took out Shen Jian. Shen Jian was still unconscious right now. His injuries were very heavy. Jian Chen immediately put Shen Jian away in the Bright Moon Divine Hall and fed him some healing pills. Tong Tian, I'd like to see where you run. You can't run from me. Even if you leave the cloud plane, I can still find you. At this moment, a furious feminine voice rang out from afar. A streak of red light flew over with lightning speed. From afar, it seemed like a comet. Tong Tian's hand immediately trembled when he heard that, and he spilled some alcohol from his cup. He became flustered as if he had encountered an extremely terrifying situation. He said, how did she get here? Didn't I end the engagement with her? Just how much does she hate me to chase me until I'm dead? Let's go. Let's go quick, Uncle Qin. Let's leave. We can't let her catch up. I can't defeat her right now. At that moment, Tong Tian had lost all his normal cockiness and confidence. A sliver of dread appeared as he stared at the red figure that flew over hurriedly. Seeing how frightened Tong Tian had become, Qin Zhen revealed a strange expression as well. He shook his head helplessly. He gazed at the approaching figure in the distance. With a wave of his hand, he vanished with Tong Tian. They seemed to have teleported. Brother Jian Chen, I shall be leaving first. Let's meet some other time. As they left, Tong Tian's voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. He left in a great hurry, so he had even left behind the table of delicacies. Tong Tian, you bastard, stop. You can't run from me. I'll catch you no matter where you run off to. I'll skin you alive and carve you up when I catch you. The woman roared angrily from behind. She was utterly furious. Chapter 1764. The lady in red Jian Chen could not help but shake his head when he saw how Tong Tian had basically fled in terror. He smiled bitterly. The feeling that Tong Tian gave him was that he seemed to fear nothing, yet he seemed to have encountered his crux just now. The lady hurrying over had actually frightened him to the point where he fled without even taking his delicacies with him, and he had also left behind the valuable table made from precious materials. Jian Chen could not help but look at the lady who shot over. He felt rather curious about her. Just what kind of person was she to scare Tong Tian away like that? The lady burned with fire under Jian Chen's gaze. She descended towards Jian Chen's location as she gave off a terrifying heat. She did not land and look down on him from above instead. She was an alluring beauty who only seemed to be in her 20s. Cold light flickered in her perfect eyes, while her longer face seemed like a painstakingly crafted sculpture. She possessed a natural type of beauty, where it was impossible to find any flaws. Her cherry lips were bright red. She was the type that people would slaver over and approach unconsciously. Without a single doubt, she was an alluring beauty. Her fire-red hair fluttered in the wind as she stood in the sky, while the fitting red robe sculpted out a curvy figure. She also wore a pair of red shoes. As the fire burned around her, she seemed like a goddess of fire. Who are you? The lady did not pursue Tong Tian. Instead, she asked Jian Chen coldly in the face while her beautiful face darkened. Jian Chen stood on the ground. He did not mind the lady's tone at all. He smiled indifferently and said, I'm Jian Chen, just a person not worth mentioning. May I ask for your name? The lady's face remained just as cold as before. She glared at Jian Chen and said, You have no right to learn who I am. I saw you with that bastard Tong Tian earlier. Tell me honestly, how are you related to him? I will never spare you if you hide even the slightest of details. Jian Chen's face remained the same as before. From Tong Tian's previous words, he already understood that the lady in red was probably engaged to Tong Tian, except Tong Tian broke off the engagement himself, which was why the lady had come hunting for him. Young Master Tong Tian saved my life. He's a good friend of mine, replied Jian Chen. However, the lady's gaze turned cold when she heard that Jian Chen was a good friend of Tong Tian. She bellowed out, Anyone who can become a good friend of that bastard is nothing good. With that, the lady launched a palm strike towards Jian Chen. As she struck out, the flames around her immediately surged, condensing into a huge palm of fire that squashed towards Jian Chen. Jian Chen frowned. The lady in red was very unreasonable. She was just flat out rude. With a thought, The laws of the sword in the surroundings immediately condensed into a giant sword chi that shot towards the palm of fire. The lady's palm of fire immediately dispersed with a boom, while Jian Chen's sword chi remained. It shone with dazzling white light. An over-god. The lady frowned as she stared at Jian Chen's sword chi. Miss, haven't you gone overboard? Jian Chen said calmly. The lady in red was a late god, so she really was stronger than Tong Tian. Jian Chen would have been better off without saying that. The lady immediately became furious again, and she cried out, "So what if I've gone overboard? Do you really think I fear you just because you're an over-god?" With that, the flames around the lady suddenly disappeared. The next moment, arcs of electricity revolved around her, and a sword that sparked with blue electricity appeared in her hand. Laws of lightning. Jian Chen was surprised. The laws of lightning were also known to be one of the laws with the greatest offense, together with the laws of the sword, the laws of destruction, and so on. Aside from the laws of fire, the lady in red had actually comprehended the laws of lightning as well. At this moment, the lady swung her sword as she charged towards Jian Chen. After using the laws of lightning, she clearly moved much faster. Her sword sparked as she sent bolts of lightning in Jian Chen's direction. Jian Chen condensed a strand of sword chi on his finger as he engaged in a battle with the lady. He moved calmly, but he became more and more surprised inside. He discovered that even though the lady was only a late god, there were barely any other late gods that would be her opponent. If his laws of the sword had not reached sword spirit, he probably would not have been the lady's opponent. Thunder! At this moment, the lady called out. She pointed her sword towards the sky as she gave off a strange presence, fusing with the world. The next moment, a bolt of lightning appeared from nothing. Coupled with a thunderous boom, it struck the lady's sparking sword with great accuracy, immediately causing it to shine with dazzling light. It flickered constantly. Then she pointed the sword at Jian Chen. The lightning was redirected towards Jian Chen immediately. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. He extended his finger calmly, and he sent out a powerful strand of sword chi to collide with the lightning. The clash immediately produced resplendent sparks. The sword chi and lightning actually dispersed together, with none of them gaining the upper hand. On the other hand, the mountain that Jian Chen stood on collapsed silently. What strength! Jian Chen could not help but sigh in amazement. The lady really was just too powerful. She was clearly only a late god, yet her battle prowess had already surpassed the limits of late god. Thunder, fire, strike! The lady called out. This time, the laws of fire and lightning revolved around her. They formed two chains that shot towards Jian Chen as they revolved around each other. Jian Chen became slightly stern. He felt like he was facing an over-god from her attack. The lady's thunderfire strike neared the might of an early over-god. Jian Chen formed a seal and a golden strand of sword chi condensed. It shot off as a golden streak of light, colliding with the chains formed from the laws of lightning and fire. Boom! The two chains dispersed at the same time, while Jian Chen's golden sword chi continued onwards just like before. It shot towards the lady, except it was slightly dimmer than before. The golden sword chi simply moved too quickly. It had basically arrived before the lady in a single moment after smashing through her chains. The woman's expression remained the same. Suddenly, a fire-red armor appeared, enveloping her entire body. The sword chi struck the armor and knocked the lady far away. Her face paled slightly, but she did not become injured at all. He raised his head and glanced at Jian Chen before he ignored Jian Chen and directly continued on his way. Jian Chen was surprised, but he did not mind too much. He glanced past the group and stopped amid God. He vaguely radiated with the pressure of sword spirit and asked the same question. The early god's face immediately changed when he sensed the shocking pressure from Jian Chen. He replied politely, "Senior, we're all people of the divine kingdom of three cauldrons. The ninth army of the Empyrean demon cult is attacking the divine kingdom right now, and wherever the ninth army moves through, all lives will be lost. The divine kingdom of three cauldrons can no longer hold their ground and will be destroyed soon. We've all fled to the divine kingdom of 9 stars in hopes of avoiding this crisis." It's the Empyrean demon cult again. Jian Chen frowned as he felt an ill omen. The Empyrean demon cult had already invaded the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons. They were extremely close to the divine kingdom of Pingtian now. However, Jian Chen became doubtful soon afterwards. The Empyrean demon cult was such a powerful organization, so why would they attack the divine kingdom of Three Cauldrons? He had heard of the divine kingdom of Three Cauldrons. It was a divine kingdom on the same level as the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Their strongest experts were only god kings, so logically speaking, an organization controlled by a god king should not have caught the Empyrean demon cult's attention. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.